LoveLore Library. Chapter 807. Having said what needed to be said, Mo Xiuya pulled Yili up, saying to Tan Jiji, "Right, if young Master Tan has nothing to do, it's best that you don't wander around the city. Right now, it's not just Enchanting in Glass City. Mo Jingli, noble consort Lu and Enchanting are all in Glass City." Enchanting didn't have much enmity with Tan Jiji, but it was different for Mo Jingli and noble consort Lu. No matter how weak Mo Jingli was, if he wanted to kill the current Tan Jiji, it would still be a piece of cake. Also, the Dechu state has already moved south of the Cloud Mist River. The Dechu state is finished. Young Master Tan's wish is about to be fulfilled. The Dechu state moved south. Then the Chu capital. Tan Jiji was shocked. Mo Xiuya said, "The Dechu state's Chu capital and the Western Tomb's imperial city are now eyes." Tan Jiji was silent. In these short 2 years, he had missed too much. Right now, what he needed to do the most was to understand the current situation and what exactly had happened in these 2 years. Mo Xiuya no longer paid any attention to Tan Jiji, leaving the dungeon side by side with Yili in a good mood. In the next few days, the Prince Ding mansion seemed to have quietened down. However, the people outside the Prince Ding mansion were still busy. Someone had leaked the news that the Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain had come to Glass City. Within a few days, Mo Jingli, Enchanting and the others had all gone to pay their respects. Even the unrelated Yelu Yi and Yelu Hong had gone to join in on the fun. Although the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain claimed to have chosen their lord on behalf of the heavens, they still knew their limits at the end of the day. The northern tribes of the barbarians beyond the Great Wall was definitely not within their scope of choice. And the most active of all was naturally Mo Jingli. In the Prince Ding mansion, Ying sat opposite Yili, sobbing non-stop. Yili didn't try to persuade her. She just sat there and waited for her to finish crying. After a long time, Ying finally stopped. She looked at Yili with tears in her eyes and said, "Third sister, I regret it so much. Why did I marry him? Back then, he clearly said that he would treat me well for the rest of my life. But now. Yili raised her eyebrows and asked softly, "What happened? Tell me properly. What's the use of crying?" Ying wiped her tears bitterly and nodded, "Third sister, you're right. I won't cry. It's not worth crying for that bastard. I must have been blind to have taken a fancy to him back then. No wonder. No wonder third sister didn't take a fancy to him back then. Prince Ding is really good to you." Speaking of this, Ying couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Back then, in the Chu capital, who didn't pity the Yi family's third miss not only lost the position of princessly, but also married a disfigured good-for-nothing in a wheelchair. But now, although Prince Ding had a head of white hair, how many men in the world could compare to his appearance and bearing? Not to mention his devotion to Yili, which was the object of envy of all the women in the world. Qing Shuang, who was standing behind Yili, secretly pursed her lips. If this fourth miss had married Prince Ding back then, she would have cried until she was half dead. But now, she was jealous of their princess consort. Yili didn't care about her jealous words and asked faintly, "What happened?" Ying sobbed as she described how Mo Jingli ran to Dongfang Yu and Dongfang Hui every day to curry favor. He even discussed with his confidants that if Dongfang Yu was willing to marry, they would remove her position as princess consort. The more she spoke, the sadder she became. Before she finished, Ying cried again. Looking at Ying, who was crying like a bag, Yili could only sigh helplessly. For the first time, she doubted whether her idea of letting Ying be Mo Jingli's spy was reliable. Or should she let Yaoji think of more ways? But thinking about it again, Qin Feng was not young anymore. Although she didn't know whether their relationship had progressed, it wasn't good to let Yaoji stay in the Muyang Marquis residence. Third sister, what should I do? Yi Ying asked with red eyes. Yi Ying was not a fool. If Mo Jingli had thought of her as Princess Ding's sister in the past, compared to the coveted power of Infinite Boundless Mountain, it was not enough. If Infinite Boundless Mountain's Dongfang Yu was really willing to marry Mo Jingli would definitely remove her without hesitation. She was not young anymore, and she had fallen out with her mother because of Yi Yu. Other than Mo Jingli, she had no one else to rely on. Moreover, although Yi Ying was a little selfish, she still couldn't do something like noble consort Lu. Yi Li thought for a while and comforted her, don't worry, even if Mo Jingli really marries Dongfang Yu, I can at least guarantee that you won't be demoted to a side consort. Yi Ying didn't believe it. How could a girl from Infinite Boundless Mountain be willing to be a side consort? It might be possible to be Mo Xiuyao's side consort, because Yi Li's backing was also very strong. The Su family definitely held an important position in the Prince Ding mansion now. But she couldn't. She was alone in Jiangnan with no one to rely on. Yi Li smiled faintly, why would I lie to you? Even if we weren't close, outsiders still know that you are my sister. If you were demoted to a side consort, would I have a lot of face? If it really doesn't work, I'll let Mo Jingli choose 2 main consorts, both of them are of the same age. But can't we? Yi Ying said unwillingly. Yi Li smiled, can't let Dongfang Yu marry Mo Jingli. It's not impossible. But do you think that Mo Jingli will vent his anger on you, or even kill you in a place that we don't even know about? Yi Ying shuddered. After following Mo Jingli for so many years, Yi Ying knew how vicious Mo Jingli was. Thinking about how Yi Yu had been burned to death, Yi Ying's expression turned even uglier. It had to be said that Mo Jingli had taken the blame for Yi Yu's death. At least, whether it was the Yi family or Yi Ying, they all thought that Mo Jingli was responsible for Yi Yu's death. We are sisters, so you have 2 choices. Stay in Glass City and cut off all ties with Mo Jingli. You are the daughter of the Yi family after all, and if you return to the Yi family, father and grandmother won't leave you alone. From then on, you can live an ordinary life. The second choice is to follow Mo Jingli back to Jiangnan. The only thing I can do is to hold on to the position of your princess consort. As for what happens in the future, that's up to you. Yi Ying's expression was conflicted. After a while, she shook her head, no, I want to go back. I can't go back to the Yi family. I am Princess Consort Li. And my child. Yi Li's eyes flashed, I will help you find your child. Once I have news, I will send someone to inform you. Third sister, you. Why are you so good to me? Yi Ying was not stupid. She would not forget that her relationship with Yi Li was not good in the past. Yi Li might help her with some trivial matters, but these matters obviously required more effort. Yi Li still helped her without hesitation. She could not help but suspect Yi Li's motives. Yi Li did not intend to use any pleasantries to brush her off. She smiled faintly, it's nothing much. If Mo Jingli really marries Dongfang Yu, it will be very dangerous for the Prince Ding mansion. As long as you occasionally give me some news, it will be fine. Don't worry, I won't ask you to do anything dangerous. I can also promise you that if you encounter any danger in the future, I can guarantee that you will be able to escape unscathed. Chapter 808. What if Prince Li doesn't marry Dongfang Yu? Then you can treat it as me doing a good deed. It can also be considered as fulfilling our blood ties, Yi Li said indifferently. Yi Ying lowered her head and pondered. She understood Yi Li's words. If Mo Jingli really married Dongfang Yu, her life would not be good. But if she had the help of the Prince Ding mansion, all right, I promise you. Yi nodded in satisfaction and handed her a handkerchief. Since you still want to see your child, don't always cry when something happens. Now you should understand that crying alone won't solve many problems. Don't worry, even if Imo Jingli goes to Dongfang you, it will not affect your position in the princely mansion. I will help you. Thank you, third sister. Yi Ying wiped her tears and said softly. Princess, Princely requests an audience. Wei Lin came in and reported. Yi Li smiled and glanced at Yi Ying. She smiled and said, it just so happens that I also have some things to discuss with Princely, invite him in. You. Yi Ying bit her lip and said angrily, I don't want to see him. All right then, go to the painting pavilion in front and sit for a while. What a silly child. Did you really think that Imo Jingli was here to coax you? She called for someone to take Yi Ying away. After a while, Imo Jingli walked in from the other side. From afar, Imo Jingli saw the woman in green sitting by the lake. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Imo Jingli suddenly realized that he could still clearly remember the first time he saw Yi Li after the engagement was annulled. Although Yi Li had embarrassed him at Shindexian, that was the first time he had a vague feeling that this Yi Li was different from what he had thought. After so many years, Yi Li's appearance had not changed much. Perhaps it was because she had a few children, but she had gained a different kind of elegance and gentleness. King Li, seeing Imo Jingli walking towards her, Yi Li nodded but did not rise to greet him. Prince Li, please take a seat. Imo Jingli sat down in silence. Seeing Qing Shuang bring tea over, he asked indifferently, this girl is still following you. Yi Li was a little surprised that the arrogant Imo Jingli would actually remember a little girl by her side. He smiled and said, Qing Shuang is not young anymore. She won't be able to follow me for long. Qing Shuang and Ah Jin's marriage was almost finished. Director Mo was naturally satisfied. Ah Jin and Qing Shuang did not have any objections. They just had to wait until they were free to hold the wedding. There seemed to be nothing to say, and they fell silent for a while. Yi Li was not in a hurry to speak. Mo Jingli did not speak, so she calmly drank her tea. After a long while, Mo Jingli felt a little uncomfortable. He opened his mouth and asked, Is Ying with you? Yi Li did not deny it. She nodded and said, She just came to chat with me for a while, then went to rest. Is King Li here to find fourth sister? What did she say to you? Mo Jingli's tone was a little stiff, and there was a trace of anger. Yi Li glanced at him inexplicably and said, What else do you want to tell me? Isn't it about King Li's plan to divorce your wife and remarry? I don't want to divorce my wife. Mo Jingli said angrily. Yi Li smiled and nodded, saying, I know. King Li just wants to demote his wife to a concubine to make room for Miss Dongfang to be the wife. Mo Jingli looked at her and said, I see that Yi Ying has been demoted to a concubine. Are you not happy? Yi Li was a little confused and asked, Why should I be happy that fourth sister has been demoted to a concubine? Could it be that having a younger sister as a princess sounds worse than having a younger sister as a concubine? Back then, she stole your position as Princess Li, don't you hate her? Mo Jingli stared at Yi Li and asked in a low voice. Yi Li was taken aback, and said with some amusement, Could it be that Your Highness King Li wants to say that you are standing up for me? Or is King Li planning to use some strange excuse to cover up the fact that you have demoted your wife to a concubine? Mo Jingli did not fly into a rage as usual. He looked at Yi Li and said, If you were Princess Li, even if it was for the sake of the vast expanse 3, I would not marry Dongfang you. Cough cough. Yi Li almost choked on her tea. She looked at Mo Jingli in shock. What was this? Back then, he had abandoned her like a worn-out shoe. Now, he was confessing his love. Back then, he had loved her like a treasure. Now, he was treating her like a weed. Looking at Mo Jingli's serious expression, Yili suddenly felt a little disgusted. You don't believe me? Mo Jingli stared at her. Yili shook her head and said, it doesn't matter whether I believe you or not. Prince, please don't say such things in the future. Also, fourth sister has been with Prince for 10 years. She has suffered a lot. Prince, please take pity on her and leave her a place to stay. Mo Jingli said unhappily, what do you mean? I have no intention of abandoning her. Did she tell you that? Yili said indifferently, so what if Prince has no intention of abandoning her? Prince is from the imperial family. Don't tell me he has not seen enough of such things. Fourth sister has no relatives in Jiangnan. She has no backing. If she is demoted from a princess to a concubine, what kind of life does Prince think she will have? You are so good to her. Mo Jingli gritted his teeth and said. Yili speaking up for Yi Ying was not a big deal, but in Mo Jingli's ears, it was very uncomfortable. Yili smiled and said, we are both women. Why do you have to make things difficult for women? In this world, women do not have it easy. Not everyone has Yili's good fortune. Looking at the faint smile on Yili's face, Mo Jingli felt even more irritated. He said irritably, I know. I can guarantee that Yi Ying will always be the imperial concubine. But, what benefits will I get? Ren Qining will never be able to marry Dongfang Yu. Does that count as a benefit? Yili said indifferently. Mo Jingli's expression changed slightly. He finally nodded and said, it's a deal. Ren Qining claimed to be a descendant of the previous dynasty. Whether he was true or not, it was at least a huge gimmick. At the same time, he was also his greatest enemy. Mo Xiuyao gave up Infinite Boundless Mountain for you. Will he really not regret it in the future? Mo Jingli seemed to dislike the smile on Yili's face. He asked somewhat maliciously. Yili smiled and said, I believe that he will not regret his decision. Mo Xiuyao not taking a concubine was indeed because of her. But abandoning Dongfang Yu and Infinite Boundless Mountain was not entirely because of her. Infinite Boundless Mountain was not of help to the Prince Ding mansion in the long run. Instead, it was trouble. Mo Jingli snorted coldly and said, what? Mo Xiuyao may not regret it now, but one day he will. At that time, he will only hate you even more. Are you talking about yourself, Prince Li? Mo Xiuyao's voice sounded lazily from behind. Mo Jingli's expression stiffened. Abruptly turning his head, he saw that Mo Xiuyao was already 3 steps away from him. Not noticing Mo Jingli's ugly expression in the slightest, Mo Xiuyao walked to Yi Li's side and bent down to kiss her. Holding Yi Li's shoulder, he smiled proudly and said, for Miss Li, I will never regret it. Chapter 809. For Miss Li, I will never regret it. Mo Xiuyao stood behind Yi Li, looking down at Mo Jingli. Hearing Mo Xiuyao's words, Mo Jingli's expression, which had already been ugly, became even more gloomy. Laughing coldly, he said, is that so? Mo Xiuyao raised his brows, saying, of course. This prince is not one of those people who have eyes but cannot see. Lazily sitting down on the stool beside Yi Li, Mo Xiuyao ignored Mo Jingli's ugly expression, looking at Yi Li with some displeasure, saying, Miss Li, why are you speaking with him alone here? Yi Li raised her brows, looking at him with a smile that was not a smile, asking, could it be that this concubine cannot speak with others alone? Mo Xiuyao hurriedly smiled apologetically, saying, how could that be? For Miss Li to be willing to speak with others, that is their honor. However, some people are full of evil intentions, and Miss Li cannot afford not to guard against them. Yi Li smiled but did not speak, looking at him calmly with a slight smile. In terms of evil intentions, how many people under the heavens could compare to Prince Ding? Mo Xiaoyao also did not mind Yi Li's teasing gaze, tilting his head towards Yi Li as he asked, "Does Prince Li have anything else to say?" Even if Mo Jingli originally had something to say, he had already been angered by Mo Xiaoyao to the point that he had mostly forgotten about it. Snorting lightly, he stood up, saying, "I have come to bring Ying back to the post house." "So it is like this." Mo Xiaoyao nodded, saying, "Then Prince Li, please do as you wish." "That's right. Prince Li, Saint Yun's wife cannot be abandoned. Although Princess Consort Li cannot be considered as his wife, she has still been with Prince Li for so many years. Now that Prince Li unhesitatingly wants to demote her to a concubine for the sake of a girl from infinite boundless mountain, this will make the world think that Prince Li despises the poor and favors the rich. It's bad for Prince Li's reputation." Mo Jingli gritted his teeth. "Prince Ding, you're worrying too much." "I don't mean that." Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows, clearly not believing Mo Jingli's words. Mo Jingli wasn't in the mood to explain. He turned around and left with a sullen face. Looking at Mo Jingli's retreating back, Yi Li smiled at Mo Xiaoyao and said, "Prince came at the right time." Mo Xiaoyao smiled wholeheartedly and said, "I knew that Miss Li didn't want to talk to Mo Jingli either." Yi Li looked up at the sky helplessly. Wasn't she praising him? "Miss Li, do you think that Mo Jingli has a high chance of marrying Dongfang Yu?" Mo Xiaoyao asked somewhat curiously. Yi Li frowned slightly, saying, "If Mo Jingli doesn't use any tricks, I'm afraid that the chances aren't high. Dongfang Yu wasn't smart, but Dongfang Hui wasn't easy to deal with. With Dongfang Hui watching from the side, Mo Jingli might not be able to get what he wanted." Mo Xiaoyao said mildly, "Just now, Dongfang Hui sent someone over to pass on a message. Dongfang Yu's marriage can be treated as if it never happened. Infinite Boundless Mountain is still willing to help the Prince Ding mansion." "You refused?" Yi Li asked without the slightest doubt. "Of course I refused." Mo Xiaoyao nodded, saying, "Whatever I and the Prince Ding mansion want to do in the future, Infinite Boundless Mountain has no intention of interfering. Dongfang Hui might be smart, but Infinite Boundless Mountain and the Su family were still different from each other. The Su family might not be as powerful as Infinite Boundless Mountain, but the Su family was closer to this world. Over the past few hundred years, they had slowly assimilated into the hearts of the common people of the world. Even if the Su family was destroyed, their figures would forever remain in the annals of history. Infinite Boundless Mountain, however, placed themselves in a position that was far too transcendent. Every time they appeared, they seemed to shock the world, shrouding themselves in a mysterious aura that others could only look up to. However, it was precisely because they were far too detached from the world that they had long since gotten used to the feeling of being high and mighty. Even someone as smart as Dongfang Hui also placed herself in the same position as the majority of the people in the world. Dongfang Hui will be very angry. Dongfang Hui was indeed very scheming and smart. However, she had been the successor of the Infinite Boundless Mountain since birth, and had been the lord of the Infinite Boundless Mountain for decades. In fact, she was even more intolerant of rejection and disobedience than Dongfang Yu. So what if she's angry? Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. Yi Li smiled, "That's right. So what if she's angry?" The Prince Ding mansion had never feared the strength of their enemies. In the Dongfang mansion, where the signboard had just been hung, Dongfang Hui dismissed the people who had returned from the Prince Ding mansion, her expression somewhat cold. Dongfang Yu stood in front of her, saying somewhat worriedly, "Master, Prince Ding." Dongfang Hui said slowly, "Prince Ding has refused." Dongfang Yu was startled, saying with furrowed brows, "If it was because of my disciple before, now, we have already stopped asking for the marriage. Why haven't they agreed?" Dongfang Hui laughed coldly, haven't you guessed it as well? The Prince Ding Mansion had never planned to cooperate with Infinite Boundless Mountain from the start. Dongfang Yu frowned, saying, "That doesn't make sense. With our help, the Prince Ding Mansion will naturally be like a tiger that has grown wings. If they want to deal with the northern territory of the northern tribes and even the western tomb, it will be much easier. Why hasn't Prince Ding agreed?" Dongfang Hui smiled mildly. While you are intelligent, you don't have the intellect and mindset of a leader. This is also what worries Master the most. The Prince Ding Mansion's power is already sufficiently strong, and it also has the support of the Su family. If Mo Xiuyao's ambition is to conquer the world, he will be able to achieve it sooner or later. While without Infinite Boundless Mountain's power, it may be a little late, but there is no need to worry. Infinite Boundless Mountain's power was coveted, but also feared. If the Prince Ding Mansion cooperated with Infinite Boundless Mountain, Mo Xiuyao would be worried that he would not be able to get rid of them in the future, and would be held back by Infinite Boundless Mountain. But Mo Xiuyao must not forget that without Infinite Boundless Mountain's help, he may be able to achieve his goal. But if our Infinite Boundless Mountain helps others... Dongfang Hui's expression changed as she said coldly. She could understand Mo Xiuyao's thoughts, but she could not accept them. Mo Xiuyao had rejected her without hesitation. Apart from his fear of Infinite Boundless Mountain, it was more likely that he didn't think much of Infinite Boundless Mountain at all. "Master." Dongfang Yu was startled, looking somewhat worriedly at Dongfang Hui. Dongfang Hui's expression eased a little, as she smiled at her. What do you want to say?" Dongfang Yu frowned. Master intends to choose someone else to assist him. But, apart from Lei Jinting, there is probably no one else in the world who is Mo Xiuyao's match. But Lei Jinting, from what disciple sees, he should also have no intention of cooperating with Infinite Boundless Mountain. And his age. Lei Jinting was much older than Mo Xiuyao. Even if Prince Ding didn't do anything, he would still be able to drag Lei Jinting to death. It just so happened that Lei Jinting's son, Lei Dingfeng, had always been mediocre. His harvest was sufficient, and it would not be easy for him to dominate the world. Dongfang Hui nodded approvingly. As long as it did not involve the ways of the world, Dongfang Yu's vision and thoughts were extremely clear and accurate. "Then what do you think?" Dongfang Hui asked. Dongfang Yu looked at her somewhat hesitantly, wanting to say something but hesitating. Seeing this, Dongfang Hui's expression darkened. "If you are still thinking about Su Qingchen, I advise you to give up on such thoughts as soon as possible. The people of the Su family, although they look cultured and refined, they are actually cold-hearted and heartless towards outsiders. If you cannot enter their eyes, they will not feel the slightest bit of pity for you. If you go up there, you will only be asking for humiliation." Chapter 8:10. Dongfang Yu looked at her master doubtfully. For some reason, she felt that her master's words sounded like she was gnashing her teeth. However, her master had always been calm, rational, and elegant in front of her. Dongfang Yu was stunned for a moment and thought that she was overthinking. Thinking of Su Qingchen's cold rejection and Su Qingyan's sharp sarcasm, Dongfang Yu had to admit that her master was right. But even so, she was unwilling to give up and choose someone else. Not only because she was unwilling to give up to Su Qingchen, but also because compared to Mo Jingli and Ren Qining, she still thought that the Prince Ding Mansion was the best. If her master chose someone else, she felt that the probability of failure was very high. It had to be said that because Dongfang Yu didn't understand the ways of the world, her way of looking at things was not easily influenced by emotions. For example, someone as smart as Dongfang Hui would think of supporting others to deal with the Prince Ding Mansion in anger after being rejected, to teach Mo Xiuyao a lesson. However, Dongfang Yu could only not understand the Prince Ding Mansion's decision. She would be sad, but rarely angry. so she could see clearly that Mo Jingli and the Prince Ding mansion were too far apart. It couldn't be said that there was no selfishness, but her point of view was absolutely correct. Master, I don't like Mo Jingli and Ren Qining. Dongfang Yu frowned. Dongfang Hui smiled lovingly and said, you don't like them, and I don't want you to marry them. What are you worried about? Dongfang Yu frowned and said, but if it's Mo Jingli and Ren Qining, they will definitely ask me to marry them. Otherwise, they wouldn't believe the sincerity of the infinite boundless mountain. Didn't the previous generations of the infinite boundless mountain do this? If the successor of the infinite boundless mountain doesn't marry them, how can they believe that they are the ones chosen by the infinite boundless mountain? If that's the case. Dongfang Hui hesitated, but didn't say that her master wouldn't force her. She just said, Master will think about it. You go and rest first. Dongfang Yu bit the corner of her lips and asked carefully, Master, if I have a way to make young Master Qingchen marry me? Dongfang Hui obviously didn't believe in her disciple's ability. She raised her eyebrows and said, let's talk about it when you really have the ability. Go and rest first. I have to think about it. A trace of hurt flashed across Dongfang Yu's beautiful face. She could only leave silently. Dongfang Yu turned around and closed the door. She saw her master frowning and deep in thought. A trace of determination flashed across her beautiful face. Madam, the Northern Region King Ren Qining requests an audience. Inside the door, Dongfang Hui seemed to have thought of something. The expression on her face seemed to be both sad and happy. In the end, it turned into faint regret and resentment. At the door, the servant's report woke her up. She calmed down and stood up with a frown. Ren Qining, what is he doing here? The servant outside replied, the Northern Region King said that he wants to see you. Ask him to wait in the hall. Dongfang Hui ordered. Yes. Dongfang Hui tidied up her appearance and went to the front hall. As expected, Ren Qining was already waiting there. Seeing Dongfang Hui come in, he quickly stood up and bowed respectfully. Junior Lin Yuan greets Madame Dongfang. Dongfang Hui raised her eyebrows and looked at Ren Qining with a smile. Lin Yuan. Isn't the Northern Region King's surname Ren? Ren Qining smiled helplessly and said, I'm an orphan of the previous dynasty. I don't dare to walk the world with my real name. I'm ashamed to face my ancestors. In fact, Ren Qining didn't want to revert to his original name. But 2 years ago, the timing was not right. First, he had to rely on the people of the northern region. Although his late queen was a woman of the northern region, she was indeed a rare intelligent person. If he changed his name too quickly, or even the title of the country, it would only cause her and the nobles of the northern region to be dissatisfied. Second, once he really reverted to the name Lin Yuan, whether it was the Prince Ding Mansion, the West Hill or Mo Jingli, they would all be his enemies. After all, the previous dynasty was destroyed because of the Dechu state and the West Hill. At that time, he would be the target of public criticism. Dongfang Hui sized him up for a long time, then said indifferently, the descendants of the previous dynasty have been trying to revive the country for many generations, but all of them failed. It's not bad for you to have achieved what you have today. Ren Qining lowered his eyes and said with a faint smile, Madam, you flatter me. Lin Yuan has never dared to forget the wishes of my ancestors. Back then, the infinite boundless mountain and our dynasty were related by blood. This junior earnestly asks for Madam's help. Dongfang Hui was silent. Ren Qining understood that she was thinking, and wasn't in a hurry to persuade her. He sat calmly to the side, waiting for her answer. After a long while, Dongfang Hui said, Young Master Ren, to be honest, I admire your ability and perseverance. But, if you want to revive the country, I'm afraid it won't be so easy. A trace of emotion flashed through Ren Qining's eyes, and he said respectfully, Please advise me, madam. Dongfang didn't stand on ceremony. After pondering for a while, she said, "First of all, young master only established the country after marrying the princess of the northern region. The current queen is also a woman of the northern region. Other things aside, if young master wants to lead troops to the Central Plains, it will be extremely difficult for you to obtain the recognition of the landowning households of the Central Plains. In addition, I've also heard that the imperial court of the northern region is currently not stable. The endless disputes between the old officials of the previous dynasty and the nobles of the northern region are not something that can be settled overnight. For young master to already have internal strife while the world is still unsettled, I'm afraid that this is not a good sign. Even if young master really does take over the Central Plains in the future, is it still the northern region or the previous dynasty?" Ren Qining was silent. He couldn't help but admit that every word of Dongfang Hui's hit the nail on the head. It wasn't that he didn't know this, but that he had no choice but to do so at that time. Madam's meaning is, while Infinite Boundless Mountain has always stayed out of this, we are still people of the Central Plains. We definitely won't do anything to invite outsiders to invade the Central Plains. Please understand, young master, Dongfang Hui said seriously. A trace of sadness flashed across Ren Qining's face. The rise of the northern region and the current imperial court were mostly due to outsiders. Not only was this a weakness that others criticized, it was also the greatest pain in the hearts of Ren Qining and those self-proclaimed old officials of the previous dynasty. Ren Qining clenched his teeth, saying in a low voice, "If this one can guarantee that the future imperial court and royal family will all be people of the Central Plains, would Madam be willing to help?" Dongfang Hui lowered her eyes, saying mildly, "If this is really the case, then young master is a legitimate descendant of the previous dynasty. Naturally, it would be a different matter." Ren Qining felt joy in his heart, saying, "Many thanks, madam. I hope that madam will keep her word." Dongfang Hui said, "How could my infinite boundless mountain go back on our word?" Ren Qining nodded his head in satisfaction. Just as he was about to say something, someone hurried in from outside, coming before Ren Qining and whispering a few words in his ear. Ren Qining's expression changed slightly, as he stood up and said to Dongfang Hui, "This one has some urgent matters to attend to. Apologies for disturbing madam. I will take my leave now." Dongfang Hui didn't try to keep him, as she got someone to send him out. "Master, are you really planning to help Ren Qining?" Dongfang Hui walked out from inside, frowning slightly as he looked outside. Dongfang Hui snorted lightly, saying, "When did I say that I was going to help him? A descendant of the previous dynasty, whether real or not. Ren Qining owes the princess of the northern region a great debt of gratitude, yet he still didn't hesitate to kill her. Such a person is destined to be harsh and merciless. I'm afraid that the day he obtains the world in the future will be the day when the birds are gone, the bough is cast aside, and the dog is cooked." Naturally, it was a false accusation, but now, he really did have some doubts. Looking thoughtfully at Yelu Hong, Yelu Yi said, "Brother Wang, sister-in-law Wang, it's getting late, we should go." Yelu Hong didn't refute, nodding and saying, "Seventh brother is right, we really should go. Prince Ding, Princess Consort, we will take our leave now." Yili smiled and nodded, "Crown Prince, Princess, Seventh Prince, have a safe trip." Noble Consort Lu, who was sitting next to Yilu Yi, stared at Yi Li and suddenly said, "I want to take 2 people with me." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but frown. Yilu Yi gave Noble Consort Lu a warning glare, but Noble Consort Lu ignored his gaze and looked at Yi Li, saying, "I want to take Xiaoyun and Zhen Ning away." Yi Li tilted her head and smiled slightly, "Miss Qin Yaina, on what grounds do you want to take Prince Changxing and Princess Zhen Ning away?" Noble Consort Lu's expression changed and she raised her chin, saying, "They stabbed me, shouldn't I be the one to deal with them?" Yi Li's expression was calm as she said leisurely, stabbed. This consort thought that you were injured because you tried to assassinate Prince Changxing and Princess Xinning. Since you say so, seventh prince, Prince Changxing and Princess Xinning also need this consort to give them an explanation. Please leave Miss Qing Yaina behind. You dare. I am the seventh imperial consort of the northern tribes. Noble consort Lu said harshly. Yi frowned and looked at Yi Li, saying, Consort, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate. It wasn't that he didn't want to part with noble consort Lu, but the king of the northern tribes still needed noble consort Lu to speak for him. Moreover, noble consort Lu was still his future consort on the surface. If she stayed in Glass City like this, it would be a disgrace to him. Yilu Hong suddenly said with a smile, Why does this crown prince remember that seventh sister-in-law passed away a few years ago? When did seventh brother remarry? Ah, that's right, Lord Father said that he would hold a wedding ceremony for seventh brother when he returned to the northern tribes. The original seventh imperial consort was also the daughter of a large tribe in the northern tribes, but she died a few years ago from illness. Yilu Yi hadn't remarried since then. He didn't expect that he would have such a woman. Yilu Hong had also suffered a few losses because of noble consort Lu in front of the king of the northern tribes. Since Princess Ding wanted her to stay, Yilu Hong was naturally happy to help. Yilu Ye's face was gloomy. Looking at noble consort Lu's face, his heart was also wavering. Now that the northern tribes army and the Mahist army were in a stalemate, noble consort Lu's original use was naturally useless. The only use she had was her influence on the king of the northern tribes. But just as Yilu Hong had said, once he returned to the northern tribes, his father would very likely hold a wedding for him. He had never really thought of marrying noble consort Lu as his first consort. He was not even willing to be a concubine. Should he bring noble consort Lu back, or take the opportunity to get rid of her? This was a problem. Seeing the deep thought on Yilu Ye's face, noble consort Lu couldn't help but panic. Noble consort Lu knew very well what she would face if she was left in Glass City. She couldn't help but secretly regret her impulsive actions just now. These 2 years, she had suffered many injuries. But this time, not only did she lose face in front of Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li, more importantly, the person who hurt her was her own daughter. How could she take this lying down? That was why she asked Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li for Princess Xinning and Mo Xiaoyun. But she didn't expect that she would lose herself. Meeting Yi Li's calm and smiling eyes, noble consort Lu's heart suddenly turned cold. Seeing that Mo Xiaoyao didn't seem surprised at all, noble consort Lu immediately understood. From the beginning, Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li planned to keep her, regardless of whether she would ask for them or not. No, I don't want to stay in Glass City. Noble consort Lu said decisively, I want to return to the northern tribes. Yilu Yi, take me away. If her tone wasn't so unyielding, Yilu Yi might have considered it. Before noble consort Lu finished speaking, Yilu Ye's expression turned cold. He raised his hand and waved her hand away, saying to Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao, since she injured the king of Changxing and Princess Xinning, let Prince Ding and Princess Xinning deal with her. No. Yilu Yi, you can't do this to me. Don't forget, if it wasn't for me. Yilu Yi sneered, are you going to tell Prince Ding and Princess Ding how you betrayed the country? That's right. It was because of your help that I was able to take the border and several cities of the Dechu state so easily. So what? He glanced mockingly at the frightened noble consort Lu, deeply feeling that he made the right decision. He was the honorable seventh prince of the northern tribes. How could he let the nobles of the northern tribes see him as a joke for this woman? Prince Ding, Princess Ding, farewell. Ignoring noble consort Lu, Yilu Yi turned and left without hesitation. Yilu Hong cupped his hands towards Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao, and also left. Princess Ronghua followed behind Yilu Hong, smiling at Yili. When she walked past Noble Consort Lu, she stopped and said in a low voice, "Noble Consort Lu, I don't think we'll see each other again. Don't worry, Prince Ding and Princess Ding will definitely take good care of you, this traitorous slut." "No, no, take me with you." Noble Consort Lu cried out in horror. Princess Ronghua sneered, shaking off Noble Consort Lu's hand and stepped out of the door. Chapter 8:12. Betray the country. In the quiet hall, Mo Xiaoyao's voice sounded faintly. Noble Consort Lu, who had been so confident just a moment ago, immediately lost her composure. Even the slim figure in white couldn't help but tremble. She already knew how cold and heartless this man she had once been infatuated with could be. Although the Chu state had nothing to do with the Prince Ding mansion now, if Mo Xiaoyao knew what she had done. Noble Consort Lu couldn't help but shiver. She looked at the man in front of her who seemed to be neither happy nor angry. Although they originally thought that it was too easy for the northern tribes to break into the pass, they didn't suspect Noble Consort Lu. But thinking about it seriously, the Lu family was Mo Jingqi's most trusted minister in the past, and Mo Jingqi had always made no distinction between civil and military officials, appointing officials at will. It wasn't surprising that the Lu family knew a lot about the Chu state's military defenses. Although Mo Jingli had completely abandoned the Lu family before his death, and Mo Jingli had always been on guard against the Lu family, he had never considered setting up defenses. After all, on the surface, this had nothing to do with the Lu family. Most importantly, the one who leaked this information to the northern tribes was not anyone else in the Lu family, but Noble Consort Lu, who was the least likely to do it. Looking at the pale woman in white, Yili shook her head helplessly and sighed inwardly. Although she hated Noble Consort Lu, Yili still remembered the arrogant woman in white who stood beside Mo Jingqi and looked down on her. Who would have thought that Noble Consort Lu, who was once the most favored in the palace, would fall to such a state? Xiaoyao. Yili thought for a moment. She still felt that it was better to let Mo Xiaoyao deal with Noble Consort Lu personally. Noble Consort Lu's ending was sad, but also hateful. Mo Xiaoyao smiled and held Yili's hands. "This matter actually has nothing to do with us now. Send someone to invite Prince Li and Prince Changxing over." Now, Mo Jingli was the regent of the Dechu state, and Noble Consort Lu was Mo Xiaoyan's mother. Naturally, she would be handed over to them. He believed that Mo Jingli, who had been fooled by this woman, would definitely give him a satisfactory punishment. Mo Jingli arrived very quickly. A few days ago, Mo Xiaoyao had caused him to bleed profusely. When Mo Jingli arrived, he didn't look too good. Beside him were Yi Ying and Princess Xixia, whose expressions were similarly ugly. However, compared to Princess Xixia, Yi Ying's appearance wasn't that bad. Actually, if Mo Jingli married Dong Fangyu, the biggest victim would be Princess Xixia. After all, Yi Ying still had the title of princess consort. After so many years, Princess Xixia still had nothing. He had tried to meet Princess Anqi several times in Glass City, but was rejected by her on the grounds that the queen needed to take care of her baby. If Mo Jingli really married a woman with such a powerful background like Dong Fangyu, where would there be a place for Princess Xixia in the Prince Ding mansion? Following behind Mo Jingli and the other two were Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Xinning. "Uncle Prince Ding, Princess Consort, what happened?" Before Princess Xinning could finish speaking, she saw Noble Consort Lu standing at the side. Her expression couldn't help but change. These days, Princess Xinning had taken some medicine from Shenyang to apply. The hideous scars on her face already had some visible effects. Perhaps because she saw hope, Princess Xinning's mood improved a lot. Even the gloominess between her brows dissipated a lot. Although she might not be able to fully recover, at least she wouldn't scare people. However, when she saw noble consort Lu, Princess Xinning's expression still turned ugly. Not only because of the pain that noble consort Lu caused her, but also because of what Shen Yang said at Prince Changxing's mansion that day. In the past, Princess Xinning resented because her mother had hurt her. Now, it was complete disgust and disgust. Princess Xinning felt that it was no surprise that a woman who was willing to kill her own unborn children for the sake of beauty had almost caused her death back then. Why is she still here? Princess Xinning frowned in disgust. Mo Jingli's expression was also ugly. He hadn't forgotten how noble consort Lu had lied to him about the whereabouts of the children. It was just that he couldn't do anything because of Yelu Yi. Now that Yelu Yi had left, this woman was still here. A cold light flashed through Mo Jingli's eyes. He looked at Mo Xiuyao with an unkind expression and said, "You called me here just to see this woman." Mo Xiuyao raised his brows and calmly repeated Yelu Yi's words. After hearing Mo Xiuyao's words, everyone's expression turned ugly. Not only Mo Jingli and Mo Xiaoyun, but even Princess Xixia and Yi Ying looked at noble consort Lu with shock. Although they were all women, they weren't good people. But to be honest, they had never thought of committing treason. Even though Princess Xixia had followed Mo Jingli for so many years, she had never thought of telling Mo Jingli the secret of Nanzhao's imperial family survival. Lu Yunchang. Princess Xinning couldn't help but scream. She glared at noble consort Lu viciously as if she had been dipped in poison. This woman was really crazy. Had she never thought of what would happen to the Lu family and her children if the Northern Tribe's army were to be lured into Dechu state? She thought of how she and her brother had felt when Dechu was almost destroyed and how she and her brother had been waiting for death together. So it was her biological mother who had caused all of this. Bitch. Mo Jingli's expression was malicious as he ruthlessly slapped her. This slap was completely merciless. Even though noble consort Lu knew some martial arts compared to other women, she still fell to the ground from this swift slap. Her forehead hit a nearby chair. Noble consort Lu spat out a mouthful of blood and clutched her abdomen in pain. She even spat out a tooth along with the blood. Although many days had passed, the wound from Princess Xinning's stab had not completely healed. Now that she had fallen to the ground, the wound on her abdomen burned with pain. A slap was not enough to relieve the anger in Mo Jingli's chest. This woman. The Dechu state had been defeated so badly and had retreated to Jiangnan. It was all because of this woman. Seeing that Mo Xiuyao now occupied this vast land while he could only retreat to Jiangnan, which was less than a quarter of his original land, Mo Jingli wanted to cut noble consort Lu into pieces and grind her bones to dust. Princely, Mo Jingli wanted to go forward and kick her a few more times but was stopped by Mo Xiuyao. Mo Jingli looked at him coldly and said mockingly, "Could it be that Prince Ding still wants to save this bitch?" That's right. In the past, this woman was deeply in love with Prince Ding. Mo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows and smiled, saying faintly, "Princely misunderstood. I wanted to say, don't dirty eyes floor. Also, don't teach the child bad things." Everyone was stunned and followed Mo Xiuyao's gaze. Sure enough, they saw a small head poking out of the door and looking curiously at the situation inside with big round eyes. Yi Li's face darkened, saying faintly, "Yu Qin, are you coming or not?" Mo Xiaobao blinked and waved at Yi Li with a smile. "Nyangqin, what are you doing here?" Stepping over the threshold into the hall, everyone saw that there was a string of little radishes behind her. Ling Junhan and Su Jirue also followed behind. Seeing Yi Li's expression, Mo Xiaobao knew that things were not good. Nyangqin was angry. He quickly put on an innocent smile and ran towards Yi Li. A white shadow flashed. Noble consort Lu, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly jumped up and threw herself at Mo Xiaobao. Chapter 8:13. Ah! A pitiful cry rang out in the hall. Noble Consort Lu held her right hand as she glared at the person in front of her. There was a deep and heavy cut on her right wrist, fresh blood flowing out without stopping. Mo Xiaobao, who was originally in danger, was held in Yi Li's arms. Yi Li's other hand was still holding a dagger that was dripping with blood. Mo Xiaobao's face was pale from fright. He called out for his mother and then lay in Yi Li's arms, unwilling to move. No matter how smart he was still a child 7 or 8 years old. Not crying from this kind of fright was already considered brave. Yi Li's elegant and gentle face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. She coldly stared at the woman in front of her, and for the first time, her eyes flashed with murderous intent. Noble Consort Lu already understood that in this unfamiliar city, if she fell into the hands of Mo Xiuyao and Mo Jingli, only death would await her. When she threw herself at Mo Xiaobao, it could be said that she used all her strength. But she didn't expect that she would still fail at the last moment. Yi Li's dagger didn't show any mercy. Even if she didn't die, Noble Consort Lu's right hand would be crippled from now on. Although she often heard people say that the Prince Ding Mansion's martial arts were extraordinary, Noble Consort Lu never took it seriously. She didn't really fight with Yi Li and also didn't really see Yi Li fight with others. 10 years ago, Yi Li couldn't even shoot an arrow properly. She didn't expect that her movements would be so nimble and fierce. Mother! Mo Xiaobao lay in Yi Li's arms and cried out aggrievedly. Lowering her head to look at the child in her arms, Mo Xiaobao grew a lot taller in this year. Yi Li had some difficulty holding him. Seeing her son with red eyes in her arms, Yi Li's heart softened. Putting away the dagger, she carried Mo Xiaobao back to Mo Xiuyao's side and placed him in Mo Xiuyao's arms. Although Mo Xiaobao had always been at odds with his father, he was very obedient at this time. Sitting in his lord father's embrace, Mo Xiaobao suddenly felt that the shock from before had calmed down. His pale little face also regained some color. Ling Junhan and Su Jirue were also frightened. Although they didn't see clearly what Yi Li and Noble Consort Lu did, they saw the blood on the ground and everyone's faces. Yi Li called for people to carry the 2 children away. These 2 children were younger than Mo Xiaobao, and their courage was also greater than Mo Xiaobao's. It was not good to be frightened. Mo Xiuyao lowered his head to look at Xiaobao, who was squirming uneasily in his arms. He stiffly patted him to comfort him. His gaze on Noble Consort Lu was so gloomy that even Mo Jingli couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Xin Ning, who were standing on the side in shock, couldn't even move. They didn't see how Mo Xiuyao made his move. Everyone only felt that 2 shadows flashed in the hall. Mo Xiuyao had already sat back down on the chair with Mo Xiaobao in his arms. Noble Consort Lu, who was originally leaning on the chair, fell back to the ground again. Her 4 limbs were hanging on the ground in a very strange manner. She couldn't move at all. But just now, Yi Li had only slashed Noble Consort Lu once, and her screams could be heard even outside. Now, after such a huge change, she didn't even make a sound. Everyone took a closer look and found that it wasn't that Noble Consort Lu didn't scream. It was that her mute acupoint was hit and she couldn't make any sound. There was no need to look at her injuries. Just by looking at Noble Consort Lu's ferocious and twisted expression, one could know how much pain she was in. However, no one sympathized with such torture when it was inflicted on such a beautiful woman. Even Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Xin Ning were just stunned for a moment. Then, they turned their heads and didn't dare to look again. Noble Consort Lu trembled in pain. But even if she used all her remaining strength, she still couldn't make a sound. She could only look at the people in front of her in horror and look at her indifferently. Once, noble consort Lu thought that the days when she just left the palace were very painful. It was so painful that she never wanted to recall those days. But now, she understood that compared to falling into Mo Xiuyao's hands, she would rather live like that for the rest of her life. Mo Xiaobao sat in Mo Xiuyao's arms and curiously looked at noble consort Lu, who was writhing on the ground in pain. Because she couldn't move her limbs at all, she was like a worm writhing on the ground. "Father, what's wrong with her?" Mo Xiuyao carelessly patted his little head and said, "She was just playing on the ground because she had nothing to do." Mo Xiaobao blinked his big eyes. A bright light flashed in his dark eyes. "Does Lord Father think I'm an idiot? This auntie clearly looks like she's in pain." Father was so powerful. He was even more powerful than mother and uncle. Seeing that noble consort Lu was almost out of strength, Mo Xiuyao snorted and flicked his left hand to release noble consort Lu's mute acupoint. Noble consort Lu groaned in pain. She was already sweating all over and looked very embarrassed. Lying on the ground, she still trembled from the severe pain from time to time. "Mo Xiuyao, you are so cruel." Mo Xiuyao glanced at her indifferently. He didn't care about her accusation. She dared to hurt his son, but he still let her live. Mo Xiuyao was almost touched by his own kindness. "Li, don't be angry. I will train Mo Xiaobao well in the future." Seeing that Yi Li's face was still a bit cold, Mo Xiuyao quickly comforted her. He also secretly gave Mo Xiaobao a threatening look. Mo Xiaobao shrank his head and repeatedly nodded. "Mother, Xiaobao will learn powerful martial arts from father in the future." Chapter 8:14. Noble consort Lu looked at the people in the hall in horror, but only saw their cold eyes. "No. Don't. Xiaoyun, Zhenning, I was wrong. Save me, I don't want to die." Noble consort Lu looked at Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Zhenning pleadingly. Her high and mighty appearance had long been thrown away. In order to survive, she did not mind letting herself fall into the dust. Mo Xiaoyun looked at her silently, unmoved. Princess Zhenning slowly stepped forward and squatted in front of noble consort Lu. Noble consort Lu was delighted. She knew that compared to her son who had been taught by her father since young, this daughter had always been much more soft-hearted. Zhenning, I was wrong. Save me, I will love you in the future." Princess Zhenning raised her hand and slowly pulled the veil away, revealing the twisted scar on her face. Because there was medicine on it, it looked even scarier than before. Noble consort Lu could not help but be startled by the scar on Princess Zhenning's face. Princess Zhenning looked at her calmly and said, "You are not my mother. My mother died 2 years ago. Do you see? This is the memento that my mother left for me. Do you think I will save you? My brother and my life were saved by others. I can't save you." With that, Princess Zhenning put on her veil again, stood up, and turned to leave. No, that has nothing to do with me. Don't go." Noble consort Lu wanted to reach out and grab Princess Zhenning, but her broken arm was useless. She could not even move it, let alone grab her. She could only watch as Princess Zhenning pulled Mo Xiaoyun out of the door. "No. Zhenning, come back." Princess Zhenning's footsteps paused at the door, and she pulled Mo Xiaoyun out of the door. The last glimmer of light in noble consort Lu's eyes finally disappeared. She looked at the empty door in despair and could not help but scream, "Mo Ning! Mo Xiaoyun, you two unfilial sons! Why didn't I kill you back then? I will haunt you even as a ghost, you unfilial sons." Outside the door, the siblings stopped when they heard the curses filled with hatred coming from inside. The veil covering Princess Zhenning's face was also wet. Mo Xiaoyun lowered his head and held her hand. Princess Xining took a deep breath and said, "Let's go home." Mo Xiaoyun nodded and said, "All right, big sister, let's go home." In the hall, noble concubine Lu was still cursing. Mo Xiaoyao raised the corner of his mouth slightly. He waved his hand, and a cold light flashed. Noble concubine Lu's sharp voice stopped abruptly. A streak of blood seeped out from noble consort Lu's mute acupoint. Apparently, Mo Xiaoyao had directly injured her mute acupoint. From now on, noble consort Lu could no longer make any sound. Mo Xiaoyao ignored noble consort Lu's venomous eyes. He looked at Mo Jingli and said, "You can take her away now." Mo Jingli looked at Mo Xiaoyao with a complicated expression. "You are indeed cruel." Noble consort Lu's limbs were broken, and she was mute again. Even if such a person was still alive, he wouldn't be able to cause any big waves. The longer he lived, the more painful it would be. Mo Xiaoyao smiled indifferently. "I can also give her a quick death now." "There's no need," Mo Jingli said coldly. He called for the guards waiting outside to take noble consort Lu away. He glanced at Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li and said, "I hope you will keep your promise." He obviously knew that Ren Qining had visited Dongfang Hui, but the Prince Ding mansion didn't do anything. He couldn't help but worry. Mo Xiaoyao thought of a piece of news he just heard last night. He smiled and said, "Jingli, there's a good saying. If you rely on a mountain, the mountain will collapse. If you rely on a tree, the tree will collapse. Instead of pinning your hopes on others, it's better to rely on yourself. You want to break the promise." Mo Xiaoyao frowned and said gloomily. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "Li Wang misunderstood, but, even if we stop Ren Qining, it doesn't mean the winner will be Li Wang. Does Li Wang understand?" Talking to Yi Li about this kind of thing always made Mo Jingli unhappy. He said in a bad mood, "As long as you keep your promise, you don't have to worry about anything else." Yi Li nodded indifferently and said, "Since it's like this, Li Wang can rest assured." Mo Jingli snorted and ignored Ying and Princess Shi Xia who were listening with a blank face. He turned and walked out. Princess Shi Xia and Ying could only follow in a hurry. There was only the family of 3 left in the hall. Yi Li turned around and stared at Mo Xiaobao. Mo Xiaobao's little face tightened and he squeezed out a pitiful smile. Mo Xiaoyao raised an eyebrow and casually took Mo Xiaobao out of his arms and threw him to the side. 7 or 8 years old and he still wanted to be held. What a scandal. "Mother," Yi Li looked at him indifferently, "why are you here today?" Mo Xiaobao pouted, "Isn't this Xiaobao's home?" Mother saying this makes Xiaobao sad. "Don't pretend to cry, you don't even have half a drop of tear." Yi Li bluntly exposed his trick. Mo Xiaobao could only put down his little hand that was covering his eyes. Sure enough, it was dry and there wasn't even a trace of red. Mo Xiaobao carefully took 2 steps forward and said with a calm face, "Mother, is Xiaobao wrong? What's wrong?" Yi Li asked. Mo Xiaobao seriously counted with his little fingers and said, "Xiaobao shouldn't have not gone to the academy to study. I shouldn't have brought Ling Xiao Dai and Jirue to play. I shouldn't have eavesdropped on mother and father's conversation. I shouldn't have." He really couldn't think of anything else that he shouldn't have done. But seeing that mother didn't seem to have any news, Mo Xiaobao could only secretly ask father for help. Mo Xiaoyao looked amusedly at the kid who was always at odds with him. He blinked his eyes and said with rare kindness, "All right, Li Li. This kid needs to be taught a lesson. In the future, I will teach him a good lesson. Don't be angry and hurt your body." Looking at her son looking at her, how can Yi Li still be angry? Rather than being angry at Mo Xiaobao, it's better to say that she is angry at herself. If she didn't call Mo Xiaobao in just now, Mo Xiaobao wouldn't have been almost hurt by noble consort Lu. However, daring to be lazy and not go to the academy, this kind of practice can't be allowed to continue. Yesterday, what Taigong taught you, copy 20 times. Tomorrow, send it to Taigong for review. In addition, add a letter of self-criticism, understand? Mo Xiaobao listlessly drooped his head. Originally, only father liked to punish him by copying. Now there is mother. Woo-woo, Taigong, Xiaobao was wrong. Chapter 8:15. No one paid attention to how Mo Jingli would deal with noble consort Lu. Perhaps Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Xin Ning would pay some attention, but they would not do anything for this woman they once called their mother. Noble consort Lu's actions had exceeded the limits of what they had been taught since they were young. Moreover, for the sake of their hard-won peaceful lives, they would not do anything for this woman. It was not until many days later when Mo Jingli left Glass City and returned to Jiangnan that someone discovered a heavily injured corpse in the outskirts of Glass City. In the end, Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Xin Ning buried her outside the city without a tombstone. Yili only smiled faintly after hearing her subordinate's report and did not pay any more attention to it. On the day Mo Jingli took noble consort Lu away, Enchanting personally came to bid farewell to Yili and Mo Xiuyao and returned to his residence. Since Enchanting had already left, there was no point for the Emperor of Shiling's envoy to stay. He also left the next day and returned to Shiling. In the entire Glass City, only Princess Anxi, Mo Jingli, and Ren Qining were left. Princess Anxi was pregnant and it was not easy for her to come to Glass City personally. Moreover, the neighboring Dechu state and Shiling Kingdom were busy competing with each other. Nanzhao was remote and there were no major issues, so Princess Anxi was not in a hurry to leave. As for Ren Qining and Mo Jingli, they were more diligent in coming to Dongfang Mansion than to the Prince Ding Mansion when they had nothing to do. Their intentions were obvious. Su Mansion young Master Qingchen, who had been busy for a few months, pushed all the political affairs to Mo Xiuyao and finally had the time to rest and read at home. Although young Master Qingchen was extremely intelligent, Mo Xiuyao and Yili had been busy fighting outside for more than a year. After that, Yili was pregnant and most of the political affairs in the Prince Ding Mansion were on young Master Qingchen's shoulders. It was impossible to say that he was not tired. After all, young Master Qingchen was not a person who liked power. In the past few days, she had sent off most of the important guests. Now that she finally had some free time, Su Qingchen unhesitatingly pushed all the work to Mo Xiuyao and stayed at home to read and play the phoenix zither that she had just obtained. Mo Xiuyao knew that Su Qingchen had been working very hard for the past 2 years. Thinking about how he might need to rely on young Master Qingchen in the future, he naturally couldn't offend him. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to take over all the political affairs and give young Master Qingchen a vacation. The jade-white phoenix zither seemed to carry a faint ink fragrance as it flowed with ethereal and leisurely music, making the originally tranquil courtyard even more serene. Even the people in the mansion outside the courtyard couldn't help but feel comfortable and at ease when they heard the sound of the zither. It was as if the worries in their hearts had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Young Master Qingchen's zither sounds really nice. On the other side of the courtyard, Qin Zheng was entertaining Murong Ting and Hua Tianxiang for tea. Hearing the sound of the zither coming from outside the courtyard, Murong Ting couldn't help but sigh. Although Murong Ting was not good at the zither, Qin Zheng and Hua Tianxiang were quite accomplished. Hua Tianxiang smiled and said, after listening to young Master Qingchen play the zither, "I'm afraid I won't dare to embarrass myself in front of others in the future." Although they were quite confident in their zither skills, when they really heard young Master Qingchen's music, they realized the difference and distance between them. Qin Zheng nodded and said with a smile, "Young Master Feng San is known as the Zither Master. I've also heard his music. I'm afraid it's slightly inferior to Big Brother's. Hua Tianshang said, young Master Feng San is devoted to the zither. Sometimes it's unavoidable that it's too sad. It's not as relaxing and intoxicating as young Master Qingchen. Murong Ting waved her hand and said, I don't quite understand what you're talking about. Anyway, young Master Qingchen's zither sounds nice. Zheng He, you're so lucky. You can often listen to his music. Qin Zheng smiled helplessly and said, it's also my first time hearing Big Brother play the zither. These few years, Big Brother has been so busy that even Mother can't find him. Where would he find the time to play the zither? Murong Ting blinked and said in a low voice, I heard that Prince Ding and Princess Li gave the Phoenix zither that Mo Jingli just sent to young Master Qingchen. Young Master Qingchen must be playing the Phoenix zither now. Qin Zheng said curiously, Murong Ting, do you want to see the Phoenix zither? The zither is in Big Brother's hands. I'm afraid it's not convenient for us to go over. But later, we can ask Qing Zhe to borrow it from Big Brother to feast our eyes. Murong Ting shook her head and sighed, I don't know how to play the zither. Actually, I want to see the incineration sword. Thinking that one of the 4 national treasures of Dechu State, the #1 sword in the world, the incineration sword, was in the Ding King's residence, but she had no chance to see it, Murong Ting felt extremely worried and listless. Qin Zheng and Hua Tianxiang rolled their eyes helplessly. They knew it would be like this. Somewhere in Su Qingchen's courtyard, a beautiful woman dressed in white stood on the treetops. She stared blankly at the man dressed in white sitting on the ground in the courtyard and playing the zither with a leisurely expression. Her beautiful eyes flowed with appreciation, admiration, adoration, entanglement, pain and other complex emotions. Originally, she wanted to directly enter the courtyard to look for him. She didn't expect to hear such beautiful zither music as soon as she entered the residence. She couldn't help but follow the sound of the zither and saw the man dressed in white standing under the tree like an immortal. Her originally confident heart suddenly seemed to have been hit by something. What followed was indeed more uncertainty and panic. Such a man, could she really have him? But just thinking of that small possibility, her heart immediately filled with infinite joy and satisfaction. At this moment, she even felt that her identity, her mission, and her position were no longer important, as long as she could be with him. At the end of the song, Su Qingchen stopped and leaned against the tree, enjoying this rare moment of leisure. Young Master Qingchen. The woman in white floated to the ground and looked at him with eyes as gentle as water. Su Qingchen frowned slightly and looked at the woman in white in front of him calmly. He said indifferently, Miss Dongfang, it's rude to come uninvited. Dongfang Yu's eyes darkened and said in a low voice, I have something to discuss with young Master Qingchen. Please forgive me for my rudeness. Su Qingchen carefully put the phoenix zither into the zither case. He stood up and looked at Dongfang Yu, saying, these days, everything in the city has been handed over to Prince Ding. If Miss Dongfang has anything to say, you should go to the Prince Ding mansion. Dongfang Yu hurriedly shook her head and said, no, I have nothing to do with the boundless mountain. I just have something to say to young master in private. Su Qingchen frowned and said, I don't seem to have any friendship with you. There shouldn't be anything private to say. Miss Dongfang, please go back. After saying that, he picked up the zither case and prepared to enter the house. No, young Master Qingchen. Seeing that Su Qingchen was about to leave, Dongfang Yu hurriedly called out. Young Master Qingchen. In a hurry, she actually used her lightness technique and floated in front of Su Qingchen. Dongfang Yu's martial arts were praised by Mo Xiuyao, which was enough to prove that she was really good. And Su Qingchen just happened to be a weak scholar who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. The disparity in strength was obvious. Since Dongfang Yu insisted on blocking Su Qingchen naturally couldn't leave. What is the meaning of this, Miss Dongfang? Su Qingqian's handsome face darkened. Chapter 8:16. Young Master Qingqian, you won't even look at me. Dongfang Yu looked at the man in front of her with some grievance. Although she had not interacted with many people since she was young, she knew that she was outstanding and beautiful just by looking at the people around her and the mesmerized gazes of many people after she left the mountain. But why was young Master Qingqian not even willing to look at her? Su Qingqian frowned and did not speak. Dongfang Yu murmured softly, "Young Master. Young Master Qingqian, can you look at me?" Su Qingqian's handsome brows furrowed even tighter. Dongfang Yu's voice was low and gentle, but it made him feel very uncomfortable. It was as if something was about to break out of his mind, and his gaze involuntarily wanted to look at Dongfang Yu. However, Su Qingqian was no ordinary person. After a flash of confusion in her eyes, she regained her composure. He looked at the woman in white in front of him calmly. Her face, which was not very beautiful, seemed to become extremely lively and beautiful in an instant. It was as if in that moment, all the colors faded away, leaving only the woman in front of him alive and beautiful. Young Master Qingqian, am I not beautiful? Can you look at me?" Dongfang Yu looked deeply at Su Qingqian and murmured softly. Su Qingqian stared at Dongfang Yu and did not speak for a long time. Dongfang Yu saw that he was staring at her without moving, and was delighted. She took a step forward, and the smile on her face became even more gentle. "Young Master Qingqian, am I beautiful?" "You are very beautiful." Dongfang Yu was overjoyed and stepped forward again, until she was one step away from Su Qingqian. A faint color appeared between her eyebrows, making her look even more charming. "Young Master, Miss Dongfang, what do you want to say?" Su Qingqian's voice sounded faintly and calmly. Pfft! Hearing Su Qingqian's voice, Dongfang Yu's eyes suddenly widened, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Qingqian took a step to the side, and just happened to avoid the blood that she spat out. In an instant, the charm on Dongfang Yu's face disappeared, and she looked even more embarrassed and weak. The secret art of bewitching people was a double-edged sword. If you could control people, you could naturally do whatever you wanted, and make them obsessed and even obedient. However, if the opponent's mind was firm and unaffected, then the one who would be injured would be the caster himself. Dongfang Yu was interrupted by Su Qingqian's sudden voice at the most critical moment, and suffered instead. For a moment, his complexion turned gloomy, and his internal qi became even more rampant. It was obvious that his internal injuries were not light. "Master Qingqian." Dongfang Yu stared at the man in white in shock. He could not believe that he had failed. That day at the banquet, she had only used a little bit of it, but it had shaken the minds of many of the high-ranking officials present. She had not expected that she would fail on a man who did not know any martial arts, especially when she had already used the most profound secret technique she could use. At this point, even if an ordinary man had killed his father, he would completely forget to submit to her secret technique. Did this man really hate her that much? Su Qingqian glanced at the woman in white with displeasure and said indifferently, "Unorthodox methods. Miss, please conduct yourself with dignity." On the night of Mr. Qingyan's birthday banquet, Su Qingqian had already seen Dongfang Yu's unique and strange attraction to men. However, he did not feel this way after meeting her a few times. Even if he did not know that the infinite boundless mountain had such a unique secret technique, Su Qingqian should have felt that something was wrong. How could he have fallen into her trap? At this moment, Su Qingqian was not unlucky. The one who was unlucky was Dongfang Yu. This kind of secret technique to charm and control people's minds was harder to practice than martial arts. Dongfang Yu could be considered to be very talented to have such an achievement. Even her master, Dongfang Hui, could not compare to her in this aspect. However, at the same time, the price of failure was also very high. Her face, which had turned gray from spitting out a mouthful of blood, gradually began to turn red. Her watery eyes, which had been filled with hidden bitterness, were gradually covered with a layer of mist. Master Qinchin, Su Qinchin frowned and looked up at a certain spot on the courtyard wall. He said indifferently, still not coming out. As soon as he finished speaking, two men in black jumped down from the wall and bowed respectfully to Su Qinchin. "Greetings, Master Qinchin." Su Qinchin looked at them with a half-smile and said, "Is this how Miss Li asked you to protect me?" It was one thing for the dignified Su mansion to be unguarded. However, it had been so long, and the guards who were in charge of protecting Master Qinchin had not discovered it. That was too fake. The two guards looked at each other and said somewhat shamefully, "The prince said that as long as it does not endanger Master's safety, it is best not to ruin Master's luck with women." So it was not that they were not dutiful. It was the prince himself who wanted to see Master Qinchin make a fool of himself. Of course, if Master Qinchin had really fallen into Dongfang Yu's trap, they would still have intervened. Su Qinchin already knew what kind of person Immerse Xiuyao was, and could not blame them. He glanced at Dongfang Yu, who had already fallen to the ground and was moaning intermittently, and asked, "What happened to her?" One of them stepped forward to take a look. He coughed awkwardly and said, "This, probably. Just now, Miss Dongfang used some kind of seduction technique that can seduce men and arouse their desires. This. Master Qinchin broke her seduction technique, and she suffered internal injuries. Then, this internal injury backfired, and she. Master Qinchin did not know martial arts. He frowned and looked at Dongfang Yu. "Is she seriously injured?" The guard lowered his voice and said, "She found a man, and it is not serious." Master Qinchin's handsome face stiffened. He lowered his eyes and thought for a while, then said, "Send her back to Lady Dongfang." Since it was not their responsibility, they did not need to care. As for how Dongfang Hui was going to treat Dongfang Yu, it was none of their business. They did not know any seduction techniques. Hearing Su Qinchin's order, a guard stepped forward and lifted Dongfang Yu off the wall. In the process, Dongfang Yu, who was not in a clear state of mind, took advantage of him several times. In the quiet courtyard, Su Qinchin sat under a big tree with a zither in hand, deep in thought. Not far away, a guard in black stood in the corner, looking at the sky in a daze. After a while, there was a burst of noise outside the courtyard. The guard in black jumped up the wall to take a look, then rushed back to report, Master, Madam, and Lady Dongfang are here." Su Qinchin glanced at him lightly and said, "Stop them first. Let them in after a quarter of an hour." Although the guard did not understand the purpose of Master Qinchin's order, he still obeyed and did as he was told. Under the big tree, Master Qinchin, who was caressing the zither case, had a trace of coldness in his handsome eyes. Sure enough, the guards were very obedient. Just as Su Qinchin stood up and was about to go out, Dongfang Hui had already rushed in with Su Hongyu and Madame Su. Su Qinchin said lightly, "Father, Mother, Lady Dongfang, why are you here?" Because he did not have to go out today, Su Qinchin was dressed very casually. In the eyes of the people who just came in, this casual look was somewhat strange and inappropriate. Dongfang Hui's expression changed slightly. He stared at Su Qinchin and said, "What did you do to you, her?" Chapter 8:17. Before Su Qinchin could say anything, Madame Su was displeased. She glanced at Dongfang Hui unhappily, and her face darkened. What did she mean by what did she do to Dongfang Yu? What could her son do to Dongfang Yu? She was afraid that Dongfang Yu would do something to Qinchin. She walked up to Su Qinchin and looked him up and down. Then she asked, "Qinchin, did Miss Dongfang come here?" Su Qingchen was startled and nodded. Miss Dongfang came here an hour ago. Madame Su was shocked. She grabbed Su Qingchen and asked, "Are you okay?" This time it was Dongfang Hui's turn to be unhappy. Although Dongfang Yu wanted to do something to Su Qingchen, Madame Su's words made her feel uncomfortable. Just knowing Dongfang Yu's plan, Dongfang Hui wanted to strangle her disciple for the first time in her life. Dongfang Hui was not proficient in the art of enchantment. Although it was the secret art of the Boundless Mountain, Dongfang Hui did not think highly of it. When she was young, she only dabbled in it a little and then gave it up. The prerequisite for the success of this art of enchantment was that the man's mind was not firm enough. But how could Dongfang Hui fall in love with a man who was not firm enough and use this kind of trick to enchant him? So this kind of thing was of no use to Dongfang Hui. When she knew that Dongfang Yu was going to use the art of enchantment to deal with Su Qingchen, Dongfang Hui wanted to cut open Dongfang Yu's head to see what was inside. How could Su Qingchen be controlled by the art of enchantment? He looked gentle, but he was cold-hearted. Dongfang Hui believed that Immerse Xiuyao was controlled by the art of enchantment. She did not believe that Su Qingchen was controlled by the art of enchantment. She was afraid that something would happen to Dongfang Yu. She put down her work and rushed over. Only then did she know that Dongfang Yu had been here for more than an hour and had not come out. For a moment, Dongfang Hui was not sure whether Su Qingchen had been enchanted or not. So she tried to test Su Qingchen, but was stopped by Madame Su. "Master Su, my disciple has come to visit you. We haven't talked for a long time. Do you know where she has gone?" Dongfang Hui asked in a low voice. "This." Su Qingchen pondered for a moment and looked at the three of them hesitantly. Madame Su's heart sank when she saw his troubled expression. She was afraid that her son had really fallen into Dongfang Yu's trap. Su Hongyu frowned slightly and asked, "Did Miss Dongfang leave? When did she leave? Why is she looking for you? Why didn't I see Miss Dongfang at the gatehouse?" No matter how noble Su Hongyu was, he was biased towards his own family. Naturally, he did not want his son to marry a woman like Dongfang Yu. As soon as he opened his mouth, he asked why Miss Dongfang didn't go through the front door when she came to visit. With this clause, even if Su Qingchen and Dongfang Yu really had something going on, the Su family could reject the marriage and let Dongfang Yu marry into the family. Who would want to marry a woman who didn't go through the front door to visit a stranger? Hearing Su Hongyu's words, Dongfang Hui's face turned gloomy. Unfortunately, they were in the wrong, so there was nothing they could say. Su Qingchen calmly looked at the three people with different expressions and said lightly, "Miss Dongfang did come to visit, but she seemed to be unwell because of a sudden illness. I asked someone to send her out just now." "When?" Dongfang Hui asked anxiously. Su Qingchen thought for a moment and said, "About half an hour ago." "What happened to her?" Dongfang Hui cursed in his heart. Su Qingchen said, "I don't quite understand." Miss Dongfang suddenly vomited blood and did not look well. "I think she might have suffered an internal injury when she jumped off the wall." Dongfang Hui secretly gritted his teeth. With Dongfang Yu's martial arts, she might not have suffered an internal injury even if she jumped off a cliff. Where did they leave from? Why didn't anyone see them from outside? Su Qingchen said calmly, "Because Miss Dongfang came over the wall." The guard probably thought that Miss Dongfang did not want anyone to know that she was here, so he also left from the top of the wall. "Young master." A person landed on the top of the wall. It was the guard in black who had carried Dongfang Yu out. The innocent guard who had just been taken advantage of had a slight blush on his face. When he saw that there was a group of people in the courtyard, he could not help but be stunned. "First sir, first madam. Where is you, Dongfang Hui asked sternly. The guard was startled. When he reacted, he said, I sent Miss Dongfang out. Sent her back to the post house so quickly. Unless they used Qinggong, it was impossible to go back and forth from the Su residence to the Dongfang residence in such a short time. But no one would use Qinggong to take a girl out in broad daylight. The guard shook his head. I met Prince Li outside. He said that he was going to visit Madam at the Dongfang residence, so he sent Miss Dongfang back. You handed her to Mo Jingli. Dongfang Hui said sternly. The guard in black felt wronged. It was Miss Dongfang who agreed to let Prince Li send her back. Did they have to send Miss Dongfang back? Even if they sent her back, she would not be sent back to Madame Dongfang. It would be too late for Madame Dongfang to think of a way to save Miss Dongfang. Madame Su did not care what happened to Dongfang Yu, as long as her son was fine. She would rather Qingchen not marry a wife in this life than marry that Dongfang Yu. Madame Su smiled and tidied her son's clothes. She scolded, You child, why didn't you change your clothes before coming out when there were guests? I know I was wrong. Su Qingchen did not refute but smiled faintly. Dongfang Hui was not in the mood to see their mother-son relationship. She cupped her hands to Su Hongyu with a cold face. Brother Su, goodbye. Su Hongyu nodded faintly. I won't see you out. After sending Dongfang Hui away, Su Hongyu looked at Su Qingchen thoughtfully. He asked, Did Mo Jingli happen to meet Dongfang Yu, or did Dongfang Yu happen to meet Mo Jingli? Su Qingchen smiled faintly. Father, what's the difference? Su Hongyu thought for a while and said faintly, Don't you understand what the difference is? Dongfang Yu. Su Qingchen smiled. Dongfang Yu did not lose her mind. Even if something happened to her, it has nothing to do with the Su family and the Prince Ding mansion. Looking at his son's calm appearance, Su Hongyu nodded with satisfaction. Well done. Dongfang Yu dared to plot against the Su family. She deserved whatever happened to her. The people of the Su family had never been soft-hearted and kind enough to repay evil with good. Chapter 8:18. Dongfang Hui rushed to the inn where Mo Jingli was staying, but she did not see Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu. She could not help but look even worse. She left the inn and went to Dongfang Mansion. This time, she was not alone. Unfortunately, the scene she saw when she entered almost made Dongfang Hui vomit blood. In Dongfang Yu's room, she saw the messy clothes on the floor as soon as she entered. Dongfang Hui's face darkened. She waved away the servants behind her and walked in. Sure enough, she saw a man and a woman lying on the bed. The woman's face was red and her eyes were closed. Obviously, she was still in a deep sleep. There was also a strong musky smell in the room, reminding Dongfang Hui of what had just happened. Mo Jingli. Dongfang Hui gritted her teeth. When Dongfang Hui entered, Mo Jingli opened his eyes. Seeing Dongfang Hui's expression, he was not afraid. He sat up and said calmly, Madam Dongfang, could you please leave for a moment? Dongfang Hui's face was as cold as ice. She waved her sleeve and said hatefully, Prince Li better give me a reasonable explanation. While they were talking, Dongfang Yu gradually woke up. She was stunned when she saw her master's angry expression. She then realized that she was lying in Mo Jingli's arms and screamed. Dongfang Hui said coldly, Shut up. You still have the nerve to scream. Come out immediately when you're done. After that, she turned and left. Dongfang Yu was completely dumbfounded by this sudden turn of events. Her head was in a mess and she could not remember what happened after she failed to bewitch Su Qingchen. But she knew what had happened to her just by looking at the situation in front of her. Mo Jingli, how dare you? I'm going to kill you. Dongfang Yu shouted. She did not care that the two were still on the bed. She waved her hand and slapped Mo Jingli's head. Mo Jingli's martial arts might not be as good as Dongfang Yu's, but Dongfang Yu's internal injuries had not healed and she had just experienced such a thing. She was powerless. Mo Jingli raised his hand and grabbed her wrist, holding her tightly in his arms. Mo Jingli. I'll kill you. I will definitely kill you. Dongfang Yu's eyes were red with anger. She really couldn't understand why her well-planned plan had turned out like this. Not only had she failed to bewitch Su Qingchen, but she had also been taken advantage of by Mo Jingli. She also knew that she had completely lost the chance to make Su Qingchen accept her. The Su family had a century-old scholarly reputation. How could Su Qingchen, the first young master in the world, marry a withered woman? As soon as he thought of this, Dongfang Yu wanted to tear Mo Jingli into pieces and eat his flesh. Mo Jingli held Dongfang Yu's hands tightly and said unhappily, "Have you had enough?" Originally, he had intended to treat Dongfang Yu well. After all, Dongfang Yu's status and ability were not bad. More importantly, obtaining her would mean obtaining the support of Infinite Boundless Mountain. As long as Dongfang Yu was obedient, he would naturally treat her well. However, he didn't expect that the moment this woman woke up, she would shout at him and curse him. Had this woman forgotten that she was already his woman? So what if she made a fuss? "You're making a fuss now. You shouldn't have stuck to I before." Mo Jingli laughed coldly and said mockingly. The fragmented and intermittent scenes in her mind made Dongfang Yu's expression extremely ugly. Hearing Mo Jingli's words, she was so angry that her entire body trembled. Mo Jingli was right. She had stuck to Mo Jingli of her own accord from the start. Even if it wasn't her true wish, it couldn't change this fact. Seeing that she was no longer making a fuss, Mo Jingli then let go of her and got off the bed. He took his clothes from the side and calmly put them on. As he bent over to look at Dongfang Yu, he said, "Since things have come to this, as long as you are obedient, I will naturally treat you well. As for young Master Qingchen, who you've been longing for, he clearly knew that you were suffering from an internal injury as if you had been drugged with an aphrodisiac. Didn't he still throw you out without hesitation? Don't tell me you still miss him." Slap. Dongfang Yu slapped Mo Jingli hard across the face. "Bastard!" Mo Jingli's eyes turned cold, but he quickly suppressed his monstrous anger. He stood up and looked at her. "Since you're awake, get up quickly. Your master is waiting outside. I won't marry you." Dongfang Yu stared at him hatefully and said through gritted teeth. Mo Jingli didn't care. "Now, who else wants you besides me?" Outside, in the hall of the Dongfang mansion. Dongfang Hui had already dismissed all the attendants. She sat alone and listened, frowning as she pondered. Her face, which still had the wind and clouds, was full of malice. This move by the Su family was really too ruthless. It also really cut off the last glimmer of hope that Dongfang Hui had for the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family. Although Su Qingchen said it as if it was completely an accident, Dongfang Hui wouldn't believe that it was so simple. Dongfang Yu's technique failed, and she suffered from internal injuries. Su Qingchen got someone to send her back, but just happened to bump into Mo Jingli. Then Mo Jingli naturally became the person to treat Dongfang Yu's injuries. Everything seemed normal, but her senses and intuition, which had been in charge of Infinite Boundless Mountain for decades, told her that this was definitely not a coincidence. Actually, after Dongfang Hui had rejected Rin Qining in her heart, there weren't many choices left for Infinite Boundless Mountain. Either everyone returned to Infinite Boundless Mountain to hide from the world, or they could only choose Mo Jingli. But choosing on her own and being forced to choose like this were two completely different feelings and results. This feeling of being calculated and coerced not only made Dongfang Hui hate her disciple for not knowing her limits, but also Mo Jingli for taking advantage of the situation. She even hated Su Qingchen for being heartless and scheming against Dongfang Yu. Thinking deeper, this was the Prince Ding mansion's disdain and contempt for infinite boundless mountain. Madam, Princess Ding and the second madam of the Su family have come to visit. The attendant outside hurriedly reported. Dongfang Hui frowned. Yili choosing to visit at this time was really a little too much of a coincidence. Thinking for a while, Dongfang Hui asked, "Did Princess Ding say why she came?" The attendant said, "Princess Ding said that she heard that Miss Dongfang's body was not in good health, and specially came to visit with the second madam of the Su family." At this time, Dongfang Hui didn't want to tell Yili, but the one who came with Yili was the second madam of the Su family. This made Dongfang Hui suspect that Yili already knew the truth of the matter. After a moment of silence, she sighed somewhat dejectedly, "Since it's already like this, forget it, invite Princess Ding in." Not long after, Yili and Qingjing walked in hand. Looking at Dongfang Hui's unhappy face, Yili acted as if she didn't see it. She said with a smile, "Yili is presumptuous to visit, please forgive me, Madam Dongfang." Dongfang Hui's gaze paused on Qingjing for a while, and then she said, "Princess, you're too serious. It's an honor for you and the second madam to come." Qingjing actually didn't know much. She only heard a few words about Dongfang Yu's actions from the eldest madam of the Su family. And during this period of time, Dongfang Yu pestered Su Qingchen. Qingjing also heard about it. Even so, she didn't expect Dongfang Yu to have the guts to break into the Su family and scheme against Su Qingchen. Even though Qingjing usually came into contact with women with different personalities like Yili and Murongting, and heard a lot of strange things, she was still frightened by Dongfang Yu's actions. Not to mention that Su Qingchen was her uncle, just the name of young Master Qingchen was enough to make all the young ladies of the Dechu state admire him. Su Qingchen was also known as the immortal young master. It could be imagined that a woman who was worthy of him would not be an ordinary woman. For someone like Dongfang Yu, not to mention Su Qingchen himself and the Su family, even the young ladies of Li City would not be convinced. Chapter 8:19. Miss Dongfang came to visit the Su mansion, but Qingjing couldn't receive her personally. She even let Miss Dongfang leave the mansion with illness. Mother-in-law has already reprimanded Qingjing. "Our Su family is not a good host. Please forgive us, Mrs. Dongfang. I don't know how Miss Dongfang is. Please let Qingjing see Miss Dongfang so that I can apologize to her face to face." Qingjing looked at Dongfang Hui and said apologetically. Her words were polite, but it didn't sound polite. Dongfang Yu, a girl, should naturally be received by the youngest lady of the Su family, the second madam. But no one in the Su family had seen Dongfang Yu. How did Miss Dongfang come to the Su mansion? Why did she go to the Su mansion? Since you don't want to go through the front door and follow the etiquette of a guest, then if something happened to Dongfang Yu, naturally it wouldn't be the Su family's business. What's more, Dongfang Yu didn't have an accident in the Su family. The Su family sent the second lady to visit in person, which was already very benevolent. Dongfang Hui smiled coldly. The second lady of the Su family was unknown. She didn't expect her to be so eloquent. "Yu is a little unwell, but it's not a big deal. It's just that she was resting just now. I'm afraid she can't see you. It's better to wait for her to get better, and then invite you to have a small gathering." Qingjing smiled and didn't force her. Yili smiled and said, "In this case, we shouldn't disturb Miss Dongfang's rest. But, when we were outside, we happened to meet Princess Xixia. She said that His Highness King Li has come to your mansion and hasn't returned. Mrs. Dongfang, Please tell His Highness King Li that Princess Xixia seems to be looking for him for something urgent. If there's nothing, he should go back quickly. Otherwise, Princess Xixia will come to the Dongfang mansion soon. Princess Xixia. Dongfang Hui's face darkened slightly. She said lightly, "Why don't I remember which country's Princess Xixia?" Yili smiled apologetically. "I forgot. It's Miss Xixia. This girl has been with King Li for many years. She is deeply trusted by him. Since the message has been delivered, I and Jing will leave first. Mrs. Dongfang, please send our regards to Miss Dongfang." Yili stood up and prepared to leave. Before Dongfang Hui could say anything, she saw Mo Jingli standing at the door. Seeing Yili and Qin Jing, Mo Jingli's eyes flashed. Prince Ding Mansion and young Madame Su are also here. Yili's calm eyes swept over Mo Jingli, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. "I heard that Miss Dongfang is not feeling well, so I came to visit." So Prince Li is indeed in the Dongfang estate. It was rare for Mo Jingli to feel a little uncomfortable. Using such a method for the sake of infinite boundless mountain's power, it naturally could not be considered as just and honorable. Especially when he was in the Prince Ding mansion and did not even care about such things, he still valued her so much that he did not hesitate to use such despicable means. Naturally, people who saw this would feel that they were at a disadvantage. However, no matter how proud and arrogant Mo Jingli was, he still understood that he was not Mo Xiuyao. Mo Xiuyao could disdain infinite boundless mountain's power, and did not want their support, but he, Mo Jingli, could not. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to face this reality. However, under such circumstances, when facing Yili, Mo Jingli could not help but feel embarrassed. In this world, the thing he was most unwilling to lose face in front of Mo Xiuyao and Yili. However, the heavens did not go as he wished. Miss Dongfang is fine. She can come out to see you in a while. Mo Jingli said. No matter what, since things had already reached this point, he naturally had to confirm this matter first. As long as this matter was confirmed, Mo Jingli was not worried that Dongfang Hui would go back on her words and not help him. If Dongfang Hui went back on her words, then Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation of being chosen by the heavens would also become a shadow. Both Infinite Boundless Mountain and Dongfang Hui could not afford to lose face like this. Oh. Yili's eyes turned slightly, her smile tranquil. Looks like we seem to have missed something. Or is it that Infinite Boundless Mountain's joyous occasion is approaching? That's right, Mo Jingli said in a low voice. When the time comes, Princess Ding and Prince Ding can come and have a drink together. Yili laughed inwardly. Mo Jingli indeed valued Infinite Boundless Mountain greatly, actually intending to hold the wedding directly in Glass City. If Prince Li intends to hold the wedding in Glass City, Prince Ding and I would naturally be honored. Congratulations, Prince Li. Mo Jingli looked deeply at Yili, saying in a low voice, many thanks. Mo Jingli, don't even think about it. I'll never marry you. Yili and Mo Jingli's side were very harmonious, but outside the door, Dongfang Yu's voice had long since lost its usual calmness and gentleness, and was instead a little sharp and piercing. Everyone turned back, and saw Dongfang Yu standing at the door, glaring angrily at Mo Jingli, who was talking to Yili, with red eyes. Qin Zheng looked at Dongfang Yu with some surprise. The previous few times they met, she always felt that Dongfang Yu was like a fake soulless dummy. Now, however, the angry white-clothed woman seemed more real. It was just that the light purple marks on her low neckline made Qin Zheng blush involuntarily, and she hurriedly lowered her head, too embarrassed to look again. You, Dongfang Hui reprimanded in a low voice, displeased. Dongfang Yu was startled, and looked at Dongfang Hui full of grievance, saying, Master, I. I don't want to marry this beast. Mo Jingli's expression changed, and he looked at Dongfang Yu with the same displeasure, saying, Dongfang Yu, don't think that you're the only one who is wronged. Are you blaming I for this matter? You made yourself into this state, I can be considered your savior. Dongfang Yu gritted her teeth, saying, I don't need a bastard like you to save me. Mo Jingli laughed coldly, saying, you want others to save you, but they don't want to bother with you at all. Or maybe Miss Dongfang likes to randomly grab people on the streets. Dongfang Yu's face paled. Compared to having sex with Mo Jingli, if she was really thrown on the streets, no one knew better than Dongfang Yu the power of the backlash from the internal injury. If that was really the case, she really could be on the streets. Enough. Dongfang Hui interrupted her, saying coldly, haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Dongfang Yu was startled, and looking at the cold expression on Dongfang Hui's face, she finally couldn't help but fall to the side of the table and sob. Yili sat at the side and watched, and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Compared to the infinite boundless mountain successor who had a high and mighty face, and advised everyone according to the script, this crying girl in white was much more adorable. Unfortunately, this matter was completely her own fault. Using such a charm to control Su Qingchen, the Su family naturally couldn't sacrifice themselves to save her, so Dongfang Yu's tragedy was already doomed from the moment she had such thoughts. Dongfang Hui looked down, hiding the emotions in her eyes, and then looked at Yili, saying, Princess Ding, I still have some things to deal with here. I won't be entertaining Princess and second young Mistress Su. Yili also tactfully stood up and smiled, saying, we've disturbed you, Mistress Dongfang, please do as you please. I'll take my leave. After bidding farewell to Dongfang Hui and Mo Jingli, Yili and Qin Jing had just walked out of the door when they heard Dongfang Hui's exasperated reprimand coming from inside. Dongfang Hui had been in charge of the infinite boundless mountain for more than 20 years, and she had a steady personality. To be angered to the point that she couldn't wait for the guests to leave before scolding, it showed that she was very angry with Dongfang Yu. Both of them were the regent's official consorts. Why do I feel that Mo Jingli was mocking them by giving them this title? Yili asked after receiving the news that Mo Jingli had conferred the title of regent's official consort. Yiying had no one to rely on in the Dechu state. She had no children and no favor. How could she bear the title of Rong? And Dongfang Yu had schemed against others, but she had schemed against herself. The title of Min was more like a joke. Mo Xiaoyao said nonchalantly, maybe it's because Mo Jingli wants Yiying to live a prosperous and stable life. At the same time, he also wants Dongfang Yu to grow some brains. For something like the title, if it's not reality, then it's hope. Yili smiled and casually threw the letter on the table. She smiled, I was still thinking about how to deal with the matter of Dongfang Yu and the boundless mountain. I didn't expect it to be resolved so easily. Mo Xiaoyao said with a smile, it's all because of young Master Qingchen's unparalleled wisdom. The way he pushed the boat with the current is admirable. On the other side, Su Qingchen, who was writing with his head lowered, raised his head and said with a faint smile, if it wasn't for Prince wanting to watch the show, how could there be such an effect? If it wasn't for Mo Xiaoyao suddenly wanting to see if young Master Qingchen could resist the temptation of the art of enchantment, and not letting the guards act first, Dongfang Yu wouldn't have had the chance to use the art of enchantment on him. Naturally, there wouldn't have been such a thing afterwards. So, at the end of the day, Prince Ding was the real culprit. Mo Xiaoyao didn't feel embarrassed at all when his bad intentions were exposed. He rubbed Yili's hair and said with a smile, that's why we know that young Master Qingchen's mental fortitude is rare in the world. Back then, Dongfang Yu had only used a little bit of it in public, and even many experts with profound internal energy were affected. But this time, it was only targeted at Su Qingchen alone. Even after using all his strength, he still failed. It was enough to see how firm young Master Qingshan's willpower was. Or it could be said that it was enough to see how cold-hearted and emotionless young Master Qingshan was. Other than those who already had someone in their heart and didn't care about the beauty of the world, only those who were truly cold-hearted and emotionless could be so indifferent to such temptation. It seemed that it was still too early for the Su family to see young Master Qingshan settle down and start a family. Su Qingshan smiled faintly and said, "Prince Ding, you flatter me. Something is going to happen at the border." Su Qingshan's hand that was holding the booklet paused. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. Su Qingshan said, "As soon as Yilu Yi left Feihong Pass, he began to gather his troops. I'm afraid he wants to fight with us again before winter arrives." Mo Xiaoyao was startled by this, but he wasn't surprised. "Where's Renqining?" Yili frowned and said, "Renqining already said goodbye this morning. She should have left Glass City by now." Mo Xiaoyao lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. He looked at Yili with a smile and said, "Li, we have to prepare for war again. This time, it's the time of Yilu Yi and Helianjin's death." A cold light flashed through his eyes. Yili was startled and said with a smile, "Okay, let's go together." Chapter 8:21. After the announcement of the marriage between the Li King Manor and Infinite Boundless Mountain, because the dignitaries of the various countries had already left, this marriage did not cause much of a stir. And as the main character of this marriage, probably only Mo Jingli was truly happy. Him choosing to hold this wedding in Glass City was more or less a show of force to the Prince Ding mansion. But thinking that it was the Prince Ding mansion that had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain first, giving him this chance, this show of force could not help but become a little more awkward and boring. Along with this, his originally extremely respectful and careful attitude towards Infinite Boundless Mountain had also become 70%. Compared to Dongfang Yu's resentment and rejection of marriage, Dongfang Hui's mood was similarly bad. Actually, after the Prince Ding mansion had rejected her proposal and she had rejected Renqining, Infinite Boundless Mountain's only choice was Mo Jingli. But choosing Mo Jingli and marrying the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain was a world of difference from the current situation. Originally, when Dongfang Yu had married into the Li King Manor, Infinite Boundless Mountain was naturally still high and mighty. But after this matter, when she married into the Dechu state, the feeling among the officials was completely different. And Infinite Boundless Mountain could not even do anything to reject Dongfang Yu's marriage. While the matter between Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu had not been made known to the entire world, those who should know were already aware of it. Faced with such a grievance, Infinite Boundless Mountain had no other choice but to swallow it. These messy matters caused Dongfang Hui to be extremely vexed, and even the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family were angered to the point of hating them. Actually, after the Prince Ding mansion had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain's situation had already been a little delicate. If they did not immediately stop caring about these matters and return to Infinite Boundless Mountain to hide from the world, they could only choose another person to assist them. But in this way, Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation of being chosen by the heavens would be greatly damaged. Originally, they had chosen the Prince Ding mansion, but the Prince Ding mansion ignored them, so they chose someone else. This meant that this so-called ruler of the world was not fixed at all. Since that's the case, with all the heroes vying for supremacy relying on their own abilities, why should your Infinite Boundless Mountain be the one chosen by the heavens? It was also because of this that the news of Mo Jingli marrying Dongfang Yu did not cause too much of a stir. The power of Infinite Boundless Mountain naturally caused others to be envious, jealous, and hateful. However, with the addition of Infinite Boundless Mountain, many people could also clearly see the drawbacks. It was just that he couldn't let go of the reputation of being the chosen one. Since Infinite Boundless Mountain's so-called reputation was now mostly empty talk, a bunch of ignorant women no longer seemed so important. While Mo Jingli and the Dongfang family were busy preparing for the wedding, the Prince Ding mansion was not idle either. From Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li to the ordinary soldiers of the Mahist army, all of them were preparing for battle. The high-ranking generals of the Prince Ding mansion were even more clear that this battle was a true battle to the death with the Northern Tribe's army, to avenge the death of the previous Prince Ding Mo Xiuan when the Mahist army was almost annihilated that year. Not a single soldier of the Northern Tribe's army who had stepped into the pass would be able to return. Inside the Nanzhao post house, Yi Li and Princess Anqi sat opposite each other, leisurely sipping tea. Princess Anqi's belly was already not small, and it was obvious that she was going to be a healthy and strong little prince or young master. Princess Anqi's usually bright and cheerful face now had a hint of gentleness and grace. No matter how powerful a woman was, as long as she was going to be a mother, she would always have some gentleness and love on her face. I've been busy these past few days, and now that I finally have some free time, I'm going on a long journey again. I actually can't entertain you properly. Yi Li looked at Princess Anqi with an apologetic smile. As the queen of a kingdom, Princess Anqi naturally didn't have the same topics of conversation as the other women. However, Yi Li was also very busy these past few days, and she was somewhat lacking in hospitality. Princess Anqi said with a smile, "You and I are both people with no choice. Why are you apologizing? Are you also planning to go to war with Prince Ding this time?" Yi Li nodded and said, "Of course." Although she was worried about the two newborn children, Yi Li was even more worried about Mo Xiuyao, who was going to the battlefield. Last time, he almost lost control in West Hill, and this time, he was going to face the northern tribes in Helianzhen, who had almost massacred half of the northern Dechu state, and who had a deep hatred for the Mahist army. How could Yi Li be at ease if she did not go with him? Speaking of which, she felt a little sorry for the three children, as Mo Xiaobao had been raised by the Su family these past few years. Now, the two children were only 2 months old, and they were going to war again. The children had to be taken care of by first aunt and second aunt. Speaking of which, back then, I also wanted to gallop onto the battlefield, but I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of me. Princess Anqi sighed with a smile. Ding Wangfei can be said to be the first female general in the world. Yi Li smiled helplessly and said, "What female general, when have I really led troops to war? I just followed along and watched." Princess Anqi smiled and said, "Yes, how could Prince Ding allow you to lead troops to break through the enemy lines? Wang Fei should have been the strategist who came up with all the strategies. Isn't there a saying in the Central Plains, fierce generals are easy to find, but strategists are hard to find?" Yi Li was silent. Was there such a saying in the Central Plains? After a moment of silence, Yi Li smiled and said, "Now that the Central Plains is in chaos, it is the queen who is leisurely away from the world, making people envious. Nanjiang was remote and had been a barren land since ancient times. While the past emperors of the Central Plains liked to fight, no matter who ruled, no one had truly conquered them. It was not that Nanzhao was very powerful. While Nanzhao's people were valiant, it was a small and barren country with not many soldiers. The past emperors attacked Nanzhao either because Nanzhao had violated the border, or because they wanted to expand their territory in times of peace, to add flowers to the brocade in the history books. No one would truly use all the power of the country to attack Nanzhao. Because even if they succeeded, they would gain more than they paid. Once war broke out, the heroes would not have the mind to care about Nanzhao. They would fight for the rich lands of the Central Plains, so who would have the time to care about a small country on the border? It seems that the queen really does not have the mind to participate in this chaotic world." Yi Li asked with a smile. Actually, she could understand Princess Anqi's thoughts. Although Princess Anqi had the talent to govern a country, she lacked the domineering and ambitious nature of a woman who desired to expand her territory and achieve great things. This was not a bad thing for the people of Nanzhao. While Nanzhao's army was strong, there were only a few 100,000 people in the country. There were also many tribes that did not listen and did their own things. In this chaotic war that could break out at any moment, Nanzhao's participation would only be cannon fodder. Princess Anqi shook her head and stroked her belly. She smiled and said, I only hope that the people of Nanzhao can live and work in peace. My child will be born and grow up safely. In the future, when the throne is passed to him, his life will be complete. Yili sighed softly and said, ordinary people only seek peace in their lives. If the queen can protect the people under her rule, she will have done a great service. Princess Anqi smiled and said, now that the Central Plains is in chaos, only the people under Prince Ding and the queen can live in peace and do not have to worry about the suffering of war. It is no wonder that on our way up north, the people in many places remember Prince Ding and the queen. Chapter 8:22. Yili smiled faintly at Princess Anqi's praise. In life, it was enough to protect the peace of the people. As for merits and demerits, there was no need to care so much. Reporting to your majesty, Princess Consort. There is a woman who calls herself Princess Xixia outside the door requesting an audience. The attendant outside the door respectfully reported. Hearing the attendant's words, Princess Anqi frowned slightly and said with some displeasure, what is she doing here? Princess Anqi's heart had turned cold towards this sister of hers. Princess Xixia was her only biological sister, but when she fought with Shu Manlin in their youth, it was so difficult and dangerous. It was fine if Princess Xixia didn't help her, but because of Mo Jingli, she even helped Shu Manlin against her. In the end, she ran to the Dechu state and refused to come back, losing the face of the Nanzhao royal family. Even when the two sisters met in Glass City this time, Princess Xixia's words were filled with dissatisfaction and jealousy towards her older sister. Princess Xixia only remembered that she was made the crown princess and inherited the throne of Nanzhao. However, she didn't think about the hardships she had gone through when she was framed by Shu Manlin and suppressed by her father. It was better not to have a sister like this. Forget it, she should be returning to Jiangnan with King Li in a few days. Let her in. Princess Anqi said faintly. The attendant accepted the order and left. Yili stood and said, you sisters reminisce, I'll take my leave first. Princess Anqi hurriedly pressed down her hand and said, I don't have much to say to her. You're about to go to war and I don't know when we'll meet again. Just sit down. Yili originally wanted to leave some space for the two sisters to talk alone. Seeing Princess Anqi like this, she didn't refuse and sat down again. Not long after, Princess Xixia walked in. Seeing Yili sitting there, she was startled. Then she walked in front of Princess Anqi and called out timidly, royal sister. Princess Xixia was 28 or 29 years old this year. Although she was still beautiful, she was no longer a young girl. This appearance made her look less delicate and pitiful. Instead, it made her look more pretentious. Princess Anqi frowned slightly and pointed to the chair next to her. Why are you here? Sit down and talk. Princess Xixia didn't get the desired effect. She lowered her head in disappointment, walked to the chair Princess Anqi pointed at and sat down. Princess Anqi asked, what happened? Princess Xixia bit her lips and said with red eyes, Prince Li is going to marry Dongfang Yu. Please help Xixia, royal sister. A trace of gloominess flashed across Princess Anqi's brows. In this short period of time, Princess Xixia had come to the courier station a few times. She had said that she wanted Nanzhao to put pressure on Prince Li's manor so that Prince Li would officially take her as his consort. Princess Anqi naturally didn't agree. Even though she was the queen of Nanzhao, she couldn't control who the prince regent of Dechu state married. The Nanzhao royal family had long lost the name of Princess Xixia, so it was not proper to manage her. How can I make the decision for Prince Li to marry Dongfang? Xixia, you're not young anymore. Can't you see things clearly? Princess Anqi frowned. Princess Xixia said with grievance, but that infinite boundless mountain is extremely domineering. Dongfang forced Prince Li to promise that in the future, there will only be 2 consorts in the Prince Li's manor. No one else will be given a status, and no one will be able to give birth to a child before Dongfang. Even if Prince Li ascends the throne in the future, he won't be allowed to make me a consort. Thinking of how arrogant Dongfang was in front of her, Princess Xixia couldn't help but want to stab her to death. She was also a princess of a country, but she was being bullied by a country bumpkin. Unfortunately, she knew that whether Mo Jingli liked Dongfang or not, the people he cared about the most right now were Dongfang and Infinite Boundless Mountain. If she really did harm to Dongfang, Mo Jingli would probably kill her first. Princess, this Dongfang. While Princess Anqi knew a little about Dongfang and Infinite Boundless Mountain, she didn't know much about them. Yili shook her head and said, how can Dongfang not say it? Dongfang has been reciting the ways of a wife, a concubine, and a queen all day long. She can't wait to be a living female saint. She shouldn't have made such a rude request, right? Princess Xixia probably hasn't said anything yet, right? Princess Anqi looked at Princess Xixia. Princess Xixia's expression changed slightly. Biting her lips, she said hatefully, it's that Dongfang Hui. She said that my status is too low to be Prince Li's consort. Princess Xixia's status was low. Of course not. While the nobles of the Central Plains looked down on the small border countries, they would still give a certain amount of respect to the status of a country's princess. But Princess Xixia was different. Everyone knew that the Princess Xixia of Nanzhao no longer existed in the world. Princess Xixia was a consort conferred by the late Emperor Mo Jingqi. While she had died of illness before the conferment ceremony, so she wasn't able to enter the royal family's genealogy, she was still Mo Jingqi's woman in name. And the current Xixia was only a concubine of unknown origins in the princely manor, who was already nearing 30 and still didn't have a status. Dongfang Hui was not wrong to say that her status was low. Actually, Princess Xixia's feelings towards Mo Jingli could be said to be truly deep. Chapter 823. How could Princess Anqi not know that her life in the Dechu state would not be good in the future? But for her to give up on the southern Zhao kingdom was something she could not do no matter what. She had sacrificed too much for Mo Jingli. Not to mention other things, just these 10 years of her life was something that could not be made up for. If she left just like this, then what was the point of these 10 years of her life? Looking at Princess Anqi, she saw that she had already lowered her head and was caressing her protruding belly, no longer paying attention to her. Princess Xixia knew that she could not persuade Princess Anqi, and could not help but cry, "Royal sister, you are so cruel." She turned and ran out. Princess Anqi stared blankly at her departing figure, and could only sigh helplessly. Am I really too cruel? As if talking to herself, Princess Anqi said lightly. Yili said softly, you only did what you should have done. Not only are you Princess Xixia's sister, you are also the queen of the southern Zhao kingdom. That's right. Princess Anqi said with a bitter smile, if I was a soft-hearted person, I don't know how tall the grass on my grave would be. Forget it, let her be. Only, I don't know if we will meet again in this life. Seeing her so sad, Yili had no choice but to comfort her softly. She did not have a close relationship with Yi Zhen, Yi Ying and the others, and they were not born of the same mother. Naturally, she could not understand Princess Anqi's feelings. However, if it were his cousins from his previous life, he was afraid that they would also be very sad. Mo Jingli and Dong Fengyu's marriage was held as scheduled despite Dong Fengyu's unwillingness. It was just that the extravagance of the wedding was not even a third of Mr. Qingyun's birthday banquet. This was not hard to understand. The various countries had just left, and naturally would not rush back just for Prince Li to marry the successor of the infinite boundless mountain. Moreover, with the help of the infinite boundless mountain, Prince Li was their greatest enemy. The fact that they did not secretly cause trouble was already giving face to the Prince Ding mansion and Princess Ding, seeing that Glass City was the territory of the Prince Ding mansion. Why would they specially come to congratulate them? After Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao attended Mo Jingli's wedding, they left Glass City for Feihong Pass that night. At this moment, outside of Feihong Pass, the Chu state's northern enemy was split into two. The northern tribes and the Mahist army were facing each other. The moment Yelu Yi returned to the northern tribes' camp, he immediately deployed his troops and shifted the northern tribes' defensive line towards the south. On the other hand, Ma Shushu requested for reinforcements from the king of the northern tribes in hopes of defeating the Mahist army in one fell swoop. Yelu Hong also kept his promise and wrote a letter with Yelu Yi to the king of the northern tribes, requesting for Helian Zhen to lead troops to assist Yelu Yi in attacking the Dechu state. Ever since Helian Zhen lost to the 18-year-old Mo Xiuyao, he was abandoned by the king of the northern tribes. Although his situation had improved in recent years, the northern tribes had not been able to recover for many years because of his defeat. The king of the northern tribes looked down on his abilities and naturally did not put him in an important position. Yelu Yi suspected that Yelu Hong was helping him because of some scheme, but when he thought of the predicament that awaited him after Yelu Hong returned to the northern tribes, he did not care much. No matter what, he really needed Helian Zhen's help now. The reinforcements from the northern tribes would not arrive in a short period of time, but Yelu Yi did not care. He mobilized his troops and prepared to fight a few battles while the Mahist army was unprepared. However, Lu Jingxian, who was guarding the border, was not as unprepared as he thought. When he saw the northern tribes' movements, he also mobilized his troops. In a short 5 days, the two armies had fought more than 3 times. The northern part of Dechu state was once again engulfed in the flames of war. At this time, Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li did not appear on the battlefield. Instead, they were walking leisurely in the northern territory outside the Purple Thorns Pass. After dyeing their iconic white hair black, the two changed their appearances slightly and became a young married couple. However, they were completely different from the imposing Prince Ding and Princess Ding in Glass City. Following beside Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li was Tan Jiji, who had just been released from the Prince Ding mansion. There were not many people in this world who knew Tan Jiji's true appearance, and most of them were already dead. After 2 years of silence, it was better for people to recognize him. Therefore, even if he was walking in the north with his original appearance, he was not worried about being recognized. It was unknown whether Ren Qining was eager for quick success or was truly confident in himself. Ever since the Northern Army took down the Purple Thorns Pass, Ren Qining moved the capital of the northern region to the most prosperous city in the northeast of Dechu State, Chongqing City, which was only 300 li away from the Purple Thorns Pass. He built the capital here and renovated the palace. Even though the palace was not completely built yet, one could see the embryonic form. There were many luxurious and spacious mansions and official residences in Chongqing City. Their magnificence was comparable to Glass City and Chu Capital City. At the same time, there was a strange phenomenon in Chongqing City. Apart from a very small number of large mansions that were clustered together, the rest of the places were dilapidated. Even thatched cottages and shacks were common. It did not have the feeling of being a big city in the northeast of Dechu State. It was as if other than a few wealthy officials and nobles, there were only poor people who did not have enough food to eat. It was as if the majority of the people, who were not wealthy but at least did not have to worry about food and clothing, did not exist. Not to mention Chongqing City, which was the capital, even a small town in a remote area would not be so extreme. Tan Jiji followed Yili and Mo Xiuyao into an inconspicuous inn in the city. The innkeeper welcomed the three of them to the second floor and had a secret thought. Only then did he greet them respectfully. This subordinate greets prince and princess consort. Yili smiled faintly and said, "No need for formalities. You have worked hard these 2 years." The innkeeper said respectfully, "It is my duty." This subordinate does not dare to complain about it. This subordinate has already arranged accommodations for prince and princess consort. Prince and princess consort, please feel free to stay there. If there is anything you need this subordinate to do, princess consort, please tell me. Yili nodded and said with a smile, "Very good. You can leave first. If there is anything, the prince and I will call you." This subordinate will take his leave. The innkeeper did not ask any more and left respectfully. I did not expect that even in Chongqing City, there are spies from the Prince Ding mansion. The Prince Ding mansion is indeed pervasive. Ren Qining provoked the prince. It is really heaven's will to kill him. Chongqing had only become the capital of the northern region a little more than a year ago. Looking at the situation in the city, it was clear that the first Qi Ning must have eliminated the dissidents through iron-blooded means. Even so, the shopkeeper was still able to stay in the city so peacefully. He didn't even sound troubled or worried at all. It was clear that his management in the city must be very good. Not only Ren Qining, Tan Jiji could not help but feel a trace of depression. Could he really compete with such a person? Chapter 8:24. The innkeeper's arrangements were very appropriate. The three of them stayed in a secluded courtyard at the back of the inn. There was a door at the corner of another street in the small courtyard, allowing people to enter and exit without arousing suspicion. Mo Xiuyao's group rested for a night. The next morning, the innkeeper came to greet them again. Yi Li's group had just finished their breakfast. The innkeeper came in and greeted them before asking, "Is there anything wrong with this subordinate's preparations?" Yi Li smiled and waved her hand. "There aren't so many rules when we're outside. Prince and I are used to it." Young Master Tan. Seeing that Yi Li had her own opinion, Tan Jiji could only smile bitterly and say, "Thank you for your concern, Princess. I'm fine." Even Prince Ding and Princess Ding didn't have any opinions. How could he, a prisoner who had just been released, have any opinions? Mo Xiuyao asked faintly, after Ren Qining returned, "Did anything happen in the northern region Imperial Palace?" The innkeeper's expression turned solemn and he said respectfully, reporting to Prince, "Ever since the northern region king returned to Chongqing, his temper seems to be very bad. As soon as he returned to the palace, he fiercely reprimanded the nobles of the northern region who opposed him. These days, the conflict between the nobles of the northern region Imperial Palace and the old officials of the previous dynasty who followed the northern region king became more and more intense. The northern region king even slapped Queen Helan's face several times for imperial concubine Yun. Now, the situation in the palace is very tense. I'm afraid that the conflict between the nobles of the northern region and the old officials of the previous dynasty will erupt at any moment. It's already like this, yet Ren Qining still has the mood to send troops to attack Bauhinia Pass." Yi Li asked curiously. As soon as they left the pass, they found that Ren Qining was also mobilizing troops to attack Bauhinia Pass again. It was clear that the alliance between Ren Qining and Yilu Yi still existed. The innkeeper shook his head and said, "Originally, when the northern region king returned to Chongqing, he had already ordered the troops to attack Bauhinia Pass. However, the nobles of the tribes in the northern region did not agree to send troops, so they had not set off yet. In the past 2 days, the king of the northern region attacked the leaders of 2 northern region tribes in the palace. I heard that he only managed to gather all the troops now. Although the Northern Region Army had 1,000,000 soldiers, most of them were from the Central Plains. However, the real main fighting force was still the people from the Northern Territory. The millions of Central Plains soldiers had been forcibly recruited over the past 2 years after they occupied the places other than the Purple Thorns Pass. If he didn't have those so-called old ministers of the previous dynasty, if he didn't have the responsibility of restoring the country, he could have achieved hegemony in the northern border country just by being the prince consort of the northern border country. He wouldn't have fallen into such a dilemma. But on the other hand, if he did not have those old officials who had assisted the Lin family for generations, Enchanting might not have such methods and scheming. How could victory, defeat, gain, and loss be clearly described with just a few words? Tan Jiji was silent. Although he did not want to admit it, he knew in his heart that he could not compare to Enchanting. No matter what, Enchanting could unify the tribes of the northern region and force the court of the Dechu state to move the capital to Jiangnan. But he had been busy for so many years without accomplishing anything. In the end, he even became Mo Xiuyao's prisoner. Since Enchanting is ready to send out his troops, we should hurry. Do you need me to see Queen Helan? Yili asked. Mo Xiuyao shook his head and said, Queen Helan is a smart person. She will come to see me when she knows we are coming. There is no need to rush. Tan Jiji was startled and shook his head with a bitter smile. Even Queen Helan is on your side. I really can't think of it. What reason does Enchanting have to not lose? Yili smiled faintly and said, although Queen Helan is from the northern region, she is a rare intelligent woman. Her intelligence and ability are outstanding among women. Without a doubt, Yili admired Queen Helan very much. Compared to Princess Anxi, Queen Helan was more ruthless and decisive. She dared to bet her entire life on marrying Enchanting and did not hesitate to choose to cooperate with the Prince Ding mansion, which she was not familiar with at all. The saying of Central Plains women that a day as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of their lives was nothing to her. So when she schemed against her husband, she would not show any mercy. In comparison, Princess Anxi was much more soft-hearted toward her own family. Tan Jiji sighed and said, there are many outstanding women in the world today. Princess Ding, Princess Anxi, and that Queen Helan really make us men blush with shame. Yili smiled faintly and said, Master Tan, you flatter me. How can Yili be compared to the Queen of Nanzhao and Queen Helan? Tan Jiji shook his head and said, I feel that Princess Ding is the smartest woman in the world. Whether it was Princess Anxi or Queen Helan, they might be able to rule the world in the end. Even the men in the world would have to bow down to them. However, all they could get was power. Although Yili was only the appointed queen consort, in the eyes of the world, she would not become Prince Ding's vassal. Instead, she was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Prince Ding. More importantly, not only did she obtain enviable power, but she also had a husband who truly loved her. She had a group of relatives who prioritized her and even had a son and a daughter. It could be said that she had everything that a woman in the world desired, and she had even obtained the best. How could such a wonderful woman not be admired? Chapter 825. When Mo Xiuyao heard others praise Yili, although he felt a little jealous, he was still happy. Although he only hoped that he was the only one in the world who could see how good Li was, he also hoped that the world would acknowledge Li and not allow anyone to look down on her. Moreover, the current Mo Xiuyao was no longer the Prince Ding from many years ago who was seriously injured and disfigured. He had been married to Yili for 10 years, so there was no need to doubt the feelings between the two. He was even more confident that there was no one in the world who was more worthy of Li than him. His jealousy was just a kind of pleasure. Li is naturally the smartest woman in the world. Why do I need you to say that? Mo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows and said. Yili glanced at him helplessly and remained silent. She was also very self-aware. In terms of intelligence, she could not be considered the smartest one. What she relied on was that she had an extra lifetime of experience that was completely different from the people in this world. Seeing the faint threat in Mo Xiuyao's eyes, Tanjiji could not help but smile bitterly. Even if he had the guts as big as the sky, he would not covet Princess Ding, okay? If it was in the past, he might have some thoughts. However, after being tormented by Mo Xiuyao for 2 years, he did not have any thoughts at all. Who in the world did not know that Prince Ding valued his princess more than his own life? Who would dare to provoke the Emperor of Xiling? The vengeful spirits and Ren Qining in Xiling City were examples of what had happened. Moreover, Princess Ding herself was not easy to deal with. Those who did not have any ability to provoke her would only be asking for humiliation. Mo Xiuyao and Yili temporarily stayed in Chongqing City, but they were not in a hurry to deal with Ren Qining. Instead, they left these matters to Tan Jiji to deal with. The two of them were idle and would walk around Chongqing City from time to time. They were also very carefree. On this day, when the two of them were having their meal, the shopkeeper came to report that the vanguard of the Northern Army had already set off for the Purple Thorns Pass. Ren Qining would also set off for the expedition in a few days. Mo Xiuyao raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "He's not worried at all. He's not afraid of a fire in his own backyard." Yili smiled and said, "It seems that even though the people of the Northern Territory are staunch and unyielding, they are not incapable of acting. I'm afraid that Ren Qining only thinks that the people of the Northern Territory don't get along with the old ministers of the previous dynasty. He never thought that they would rebel against him." Mo Xiuyao said, "In Ren Qining's view, the northern tribes have long been like a group of dragons without a leader. Naturally, he didn't expect Queen Helan to have such ability. Speaking of which, the people of the northern region have long been accustomed to each tribe's own governance. I'm afraid that even without Queen Helan's secret coordination, sooner or later, they will rebel. Go. Send the news to General Leng Huai at Redbud Pass," Mo Xiuyao instructed. Just as the shopkeeper was about to leave, a burst of noise came from downstairs. Seeing the two of them frowning, the shopkeeper hurriedly excused himself and went to check. Mo Xiuyao suddenly smiled and said to Yili, "Li, let's go take a look too." The two of them went out of the wing room and looked down from the second floor. In the lobby downstairs, several men from the Central Plains in luxurious clothes were confronting several men who were obviously from the Northern Territory. Those people from the Northern Territory were all strong and sturdy. With a scowl, one could tell that they were not ordinary people who could be provoked. However, although those people from the Central Plains looked like weak and fair scholars, their momentum was not inferior in the slightest, and their words were as sharp as knives when they confronted each other. The people of the Northern Territory were not good at arguing, so naturally, they were so angry that their faces turned red and their hair stood up. In a moment of anger, they were about to start a fight. Although those people from the Central Plains were weak, they were accompanied by many bodyguards who were highly skilled in martial arts. Even if they wanted to fight, they were not afraid. As expected, the two sides started to fight as soon as they disagreed. The shopkeeper seemed to be used to this situation and hurriedly went up to persuade them with an anxious face. After he was pushed away, he hid behind the counter and stopped talking. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the lobby of the inn was in tatters and the floor was a mess. These people were so engrossed in the fight that no one even noticed Yili and Mo Xiuyao coming down from upstairs. At the counter, the shopkeeper saw the two of them coming down and hurriedly went up to invite them to a more remote corner where they could not fight. Mo Xiuyao looked curiously at the center of the lobby where the fight was still ongoing. He asked with a smile, "You don't seem to be in a hurry at all." The shopkeeper touched his forehead and said with a wry smile, "In Chongqing City, there's not a day when there's not a fight. This is already the third time this month that this humble store of mine has been here. If it's a brothel, there's no need to talk about it. As long as the two sides meet, there's no way there won't be a fight. Speaking of which, this inn was a hidden post set up by the Prince Ding mansion. It would be good if it could make money, but it didn't matter if it lost money. If it was really an inn run by ordinary people, they would have packed up and left long ago. Nowadays, the so-called Northern Region King City was very desolate. Other than those old officials of the previous dynasty and the nobles of the tribes in the northern region, the ordinary people were very poor. There were not many shops in the entire Chongqing city, so the shopkeeper's inn, which was not very luxurious, was often in trouble. Yili frowned and said, "Is there no one to take care of it?" The shopkeeper shook his head and sighed, "Who can take care of it? Those who dare to fight in the city are the nobles in the court. The leader of the northern region people is the youngest son of the leader of the former second largest tribe in the northern region. He can be considered Queen Helan's cousin. Those people from the Central Plains are the illegitimate sons of the Prime Minister conferred by the Northern Region King and the younger brother of Imperial concubine Yun." Mo Xiaoyao rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, "They are really extraordinary people." As he said this, the people who were fighting gradually moved over. One of the men from the Central Plains was punched by a man from the Northern Region, and he just happened to be smashed in front of Yili. Mo Xiaoyao snorted softly and waved his sleeve. The man's body stopped and fell to the side. However, after the man got up, he didn't rush to settle the score with the man who beat him up. Instead, his gaze fell on Yili's body. However, he was stunned for a moment. His eyes, which were clouded by alcohol, revealed a hint of lust. Although Yili had changed her appearance, she was still graceful and elegant. Although the young man was the son of a high-ranking official under Ren Qining, he had only seen tall and beautiful women in the northern region for many years. After returning to Dechu State, Chongqing City was poor, but he had never seen a woman with such an outstanding temperament like Yili. Even Imperial concubine Yun, who was the most favored in the palace, could not compare. At that moment, he did not care that he was still fighting with the man from the northern region. He looked at Yili's beautiful face with a lustful expression and said with a smile, "How should I address you, miss?" Yili was slightly stunned and could not help but find it funny. She had encountered many things over the years. However, it was the first time that she had been molested in public like this. She could not help but smile and said, "How should I address you, sir?" Seeing that Yili wasn't the slightest bit shy like other girls, the man couldn't help but be overjoyed. "This young master is the son of the current Prime Minister. Miss, why don't you follow this young master to the Prime Minister's residence for a short period of time? It's better than wronging you in this shabby inn." The man glanced at Mo Xiaoyao who was standing beside Yili and revealed a contemptuous smile. The innkeeper at the side shrank back without a trace. The son of the Prime Minister had been domineering in Chongqing City for more than a year. This time, he ran into the prince and was really looking for death. Chapter 8:26. On the other side, the people from the northern region who were fighting enthusiastically saw that their opponent had gone to the side to flirt with a girl. They couldn't help but be furious. "Coward, if you have the guts, fight with me for another 300 rounds. I won't argue with you northern region barbarians today," the Prime Minister's son said arrogantly. He could fight with the people from the northern region every day, but it was not every day that he could meet a beauty like this. Although the people from the northern region were not scheming and did not like to beat around the bush, their martial arts skills were much better than the sickly scholar's sons. Their eyesight was also much better in this aspect. They could tell at a glance that the two men were not to be trifled with. Therefore, they were not in a hurry to fight. They stopped fighting and stood aside to watch the show. Seeing that the people from the northern region had stopped fighting, the Prime Minister's son became more and more proud. Looking at the beauty in front of him smiling faintly and elegantly, the Prime Minister's son could not help but feel an itch in his heart. He reached out to take Yili's hand, but unexpectedly, a hand reached out from the side and grabbed his wrist. The Prime Minister's son was stunned. He raised his head and looked at Imo Xiuyao, who had been standing silently at the side. He said, "Who are you? Let go of me." Imo Xiuyao's lips curled into an extremely cold smile. He exerted a little force, and the Prime Minister's son screamed like a pig being slaughtered. It also startled the onlookers who were watching the commotion from the side. "Bastard! Do you know who I am?" The Prime Minister's son's face was pale and he was sweating profusely. The man in green had only lightly gripped his hand, and his hand. He could clearly feel that the bones in his hand had been broken. Even if Hua Tuo was alive, he would not be able to do anything. "I know, Prime Minister's son." Imo Xiuyao smiled faintly and gave the innkeeper a look. The innkeeper immediately understood. With a wave of his hand, the waiter who had been hiding in the corner and trembling had already nimbly closed the door of the inn. Speaking of which, it was strange that Chongqing City was too desolate. If such a big thing happened in other cities, there would be many passers-by. However, the common people in this city did not even have enough to eat and wear, so how could they afford to stay in inns and restaurants? This inn was located near the residences of the nobles in the city. Usually, there were very few pedestrians. Even if there were, they would have run away when they saw these nobles fighting. At this moment, such a group of people had been locked outside the inn, but no one had noticed. Occasionally, some passers-by would think that the shopkeeper had something to do and closed the shop. "What are you trying to do?" The moment the door closed, the others also felt that something was wrong. A few northerners wanted to rush out with their strong and agile skills, but how could those inconspicuous workers let them succeed? They were all well-trained people. "You? Who are you?" The Prime Minister's son asked in a trembling voice, his face as pale as paper. Imo Xiuyao casually tossed him aside and said indifferently, "Are the descendants of Ren Qining's old officials from the previous dynasty these good-for-nothings?" "You, how dare you? Feel free to call His Majesty by his name." Imo Xiuyao laughed disdainfully, "So what if I call him by his name? I even killed his entire family." "You?" At this moment, the expressions of everyone present changed. Imo Xiuyao had already spoken like this, so how could they not be aware of his identity? "You. You're Prince Ding." These years, Imo Xiuyao's reputation was not very good. It was no wonder that these people were so scared. Yili smiled faintly and said, "You don't have to be afraid. We won't casually kill people." "You're Princess Ding?" the Prime Minister's son asked in a trembling voice. Yili smiled sweetly, "I am indeed Yili, Prince Ding, Princess Ding. We didn't offend the two of you." The northerners looked at each other, and the leader of the group stepped forward and said carefully. Even if the northerners were barbarians, they were still afraid of death. Even they had long heard of Imo Xiuyao's reputation, which was comparable to a killing god. Yili smiled and said, "Is this young Master Queen Helan's cousin? Please inform Queen Helan that an old friend wishes to see her." This young man was also the son of the chief of the northerners. Naturally, he was somewhat shrewd and knew many things. When he heard Yili's words, his expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, "This one will definitely do so. May I ask if we can leave now?" Yili nodded, "Please go ahead." Seeing that the northerners had indeed left safely, the noblemen from the Central Plains hesitated for a moment. They also stepped forward and tried to negotiate with Imo Xiuyao and Yili, Princess, we. Yili said, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to wait here for a while." Everyone's expression changed. "Princess Ding, no matter how powerful you are, this is still the Northerners' territory. Mo Xiuyao sneered, I want to detain you. What are you going to do about it? The person who spoke withered. If Prince Ding wanted to detain them, what could they do? Aren't you afraid that the imperial court will come looking for you? Isn't Ren Qining busy preparing for an expedition right now? Does he have the time to look for a few hedonistic sons who have gone missing? The alliance between Ren Qining and Yilu Yi was of utmost importance to the Northerners. Even if something serious happened, it wouldn't affect Ren Qining's deployment of troops, let alone a few ignorant and incompetent people who had gone missing. My father will definitely send someone to save me. The Prime Minister's son trembled. The pain in his wrist caused his face to twist. Mo Xiuyao smiled. Your father doesn't need to save you. I will have someone send you back. Someone come, take him to Tanjiji. He knows what to do. As for the others, lock them up first. This subordinate obeys. The innkeeper stepped forward, picked up the Prime Minister's son, and took him to the rear courtyard. The other people were also taken away one after another, and the messy inn suddenly became quiet and silent. Yili smiled at Mo Xiuyao and said, You plan to use these people to incite conflict between the Northerners and the old officials of the previous dynasty. Will it work? Mo Xiuyao's smile was cold. We'll know if it works after we try. Chapter 827. Queen Helan came to visit on the second day after Ren Qining set out. Mo Xiuyao and Yili had already left the inn and were living in an ordinary courtyard in the city. Although quite a few children of nobles had gone missing, they did not know how Tanjiji did it. These nobles all had the same goal and did not report this suspicious matter to Ren Qining. Therefore, Ren Qining did not know what kind of changes had happened in his palace. Complacently, he led his army to attack Xijing Pass. Although the north had not been established for a long time, the nobles in the court, especially the old officials of the previous dynasty, had long lost the fighting spirit to establish a country. They had waited for too long. It was so long that if Ren Qining's generation could not do it, they would very likely give up on this illusory and ethereal dream of becoming a rich country. Therefore, although they were still far from achieving the goal of becoming a rich country that their ancestors had envisioned, they had already established a large country. In their view, as long as they chased away or killed those people from the north, they would have succeeded. Therefore, they had worked hard for too long. Now, it was naturally time for them to enjoy it. Now, in the eyes of these old officials of the previous dynasty, the so-called important matters of the court were far less important than their own matters. They had obtained gold, silver, and jewelry, land and mansions, their beautiful wives and concubines, and their children and grandchildren. They had worked hard for so many generations for the Lin family. Now, it was naturally time for them to reap the rewards. Therefore, no one felt that the matter of their son being kidnapped was very strange, or that some kind of power might have infiltrated Chongqing City. They only knew that they had to save their children and grandchildren. They could not let the kidnappers kill their children and grandchildren. Among them, the current prime minister was the most concerned. Because the one who was kidnapped was the son of his most beloved concubine, who was also imperial concubine Yun's younger brother. Princess, Queen Helan requests an audience. In the courtyard, Yili and Mo Xiuyao were sitting across from each other, playing chess. Hearing the report from the guard outside, Yili threw down the chess piece and said with a smile, "Let her in." Not long after, Queen Helan walked in with a group of people. Behind her was the leading man from the northern region who had fought in the inn the day before yesterday. It was said that he was Queen Helan's cousin. Prince Ding, Princess Ding. Queen Helan smiled brightly, without the shyness and coyness of a Central Plains woman. Yili smiled and said, "Thank you for coming here personally. Please sit." Queen Helan did not stand on ceremony. She sat down opposite Yili and Imo Xiuyao and said with a smile, "Prince Ding and Princess Ding are really capable. If my cousin had not entered the palace and told me, I'm afraid I wouldn't have known that the two of you had arrived in the northern region." Yili said apologetically, "We came in a hurry and did not have time to greet the queen. Please forgive us." Queen Helan waved her hand and said, "You don't have to be polite with me. I'm very happy that Prince Ding and your highness can come in person. At least this proves that the two of you are sincere about cooperating with the northern region, isn't it?" Yili glanced sideways at Imo Xiuyao. Imo Xiuyao smiled faintly, indicating that he would leave everything to her. Yili nodded and stopped beating around the bush with Queen Helan. She looked at the two people sitting there and asked, "Can Queen Helan decide everything in the northern region?" Queen Helan smiled and said, "The tribes of the northern region have secretly elected my father as the Khan. Even if there is something I can't decide, my father can always decide. Your Highness, please rest assured." Yili nodded with satisfaction, but sighed inwardly. The people of the northern region were not as scheming as they thought. At the very least, Queen Helan, her father, and this seemingly wise young man in front of him were not easy to deal with. That's good. The Prince Ding mansion can help the northern region deal with Enchanting. It will ensure that he and his forces will have no chance to stir up trouble in the northern region. But at the same time, the northern region must promise that after the matter is settled, all of them will return to the border between the northern region and the original Dechu state. I wonder if Queen Helan has any objections. Yili said faintly. Queen Helan nodded and said, "No problem. We just want to live our original life. Although we northern region people are not as smart as you central plainsmen, we don't want to be used as a tool." Every time Enchanting went to war, he always had the army of the northern region rush to the forefront. This was because the army of the northern region was braver than the newly formed Central Plains army, but it was also because he wanted to weaken the army of the northern region and reduce the population of the northern region in this way. Now that the northern region had established a country, its land area had expanded. But the people of the northern region were not good at farming, and many of them were not used to the life of the Central Plains. Their lives were even more difficult than before. Although the people under Enchanting are selfish and insatiable, but many of them are really capable. Moreover, Enchanting is always on guard against us. Now that he has gone to war, he has taken most of the soldiers of the northern region with him. Most of the soldiers stationed in Chongqing City are from the Central Plains. After 2 years of war, there are only about 300,000 soldiers left in the northern region, but Enchanting has more than 1 million soldiers from the Central Plains. I wonder what Prince Ding and Princess Ding plan to do. The young man who had been silent all this time asked, but there was a hint of resentment in his tone. There were only about 300,000 soldiers left in the northern region, and this could be considered a gift from the Prince Ding mansion. In the Battle of the Chu capital last year, the northern region lost more than 200,000 soldiers, and at the same time, all the tribes in the northern region hated Enchanting to death. Yili did not care about his attitude. When two armies fought, there was naturally no time for mercy. Moreover, many people from the Dechu state and the Prince Ding mansion had died in order to protect the Chu capital. Between the two countries, there were no eternal friends or eternal enemies. At least for now, when it came to Enchanting, their goals were the same, weren't they? Yili said calmly, Enchanting does have more soldiers than the northern region, but I'm afraid that there are not many that can be used. Both Mo Xiuyao and Yili were people who came from the military. Naturally, they knew the difference between the soldiers who had just joined the army and did not know anything and the so-called elite soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles. If they really fought, 10 of the Central Plains soldiers under Enchanting's command might not be able to defeat one soldier from the northern region. It was not that they were too weak, but compared to the valiant elite soldiers who had galloped through the White Mountains and Black Waters and fought among the various tribes, they were just a group of ordinary people who had just picked up weapons. Moreover, these soldiers were originally the people of the Dechu state. When it comes to important times, they might not be loyal to Enchanting. The reputation of the orphan of the previous dynasty was good, but that was because the people had a better life after careful management. Only then would they start to miss the distant previous dynasty. But now, Enchanting had established a country and occupied the Dechu state as the prince consort of the northern region. In the eyes of many people, he was just an invader who looked like someone from the Central Plains. Moreover, the people of the northern region did not have a good life these past 2 years. On the contrary, it was Enchanting who recruited soldiers that made the people suffer. The area outside of the Bauhinia Pass was close to the barbarian lands and had always been sparsely populated. Enchanting recruited more than 2 million soldiers in just 2 years. How could the people not complain? Chapter 828. Queen Helan blinked and said with a smile, "I forgot. With Prince Ding here, why worry about those soldiers not being willing to change sides?" The Prince Ding mansion's position and appeal in the hearts of the people of Dechu State had been seen by Queen Helan of Dechu State and Glass City. This was also the reason why they agreed to the conditions so readily. They weren't strong enough to compete with the Prince Ding mansion for this place. If we withdraw from Dechu State, what will happen to the soldiers that Enchanting took away? The young man asked with a frown. Yili and Mo Xiaoyao looked at each other. Mo Xiaoyao said indifferently, "Isn't this a problem you should consider?" The young man's face darkened. So many people are just going to be used as cannon fodder by Enchanting. Those are the bravest men of the north. Mo Xiaoyao said leisurely, "Did I ask you to agree to Enchanting's dispatch of troops? You gave I trouble, and you still expect I to help you withdraw your troops?" When he thought of the soldiers surrounding Bauhinia Pass, Mo Xiaoyao was also a little unhappy. Queen Helan pulled on her hot-tempered cousin and smiled apologetically at Yili. "Prince Ding, Princess, we can't do anything. Enchanting is determined to go to war. Unless we immediately fall out with him, what else can we do? We've already tried our best to delay him." Yili smiled slightly and pulled on Mo Xiaoyao's sleeve from behind. She shook her head slightly. Mo Xiaoyao put away his unhappy expression and didn't say anything else. Yili thought for a moment and said, "It's not impossible to make him withdraw his troops. However, I don't have the slightest confidence in how many can be withdrawn. We can only plan slowly." Queen Helan said happily, "I've long heard that Princess is resourceful. Today, I see that it's true. Princess is straightforward, and we, the people of the north, are not stingy. As long as Princess Consort is willing to help us bring back our soldiers from the northern region. Helan is willing to tell you all the secret forces under Enchanting. The Lin family can hide in Dechu State for 200 years and have such a huge force. Prince Ding and Princess don't want them to make a comeback after a few decades, right?" Yili looked at Helan with some surprise. Queen Helan said with a smile, "Princess doesn't have to be suspicious. These were all collected by my sister when she was alive. After all, she has been married to Enchanting for more than 10 years. Naturally, she knows more than us." Yili pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. Had been used by Enchanting for the past few years. Even if they were to bring the 300,000 soldiers back, they would not be able to contend against the Mo family army in the short term. Queen Helan cupped her hands and said with a smile, "Thank you, Princess. You and I each take our own benefits. You don't have to be polite." Passively waiting for Enchanting to lead the army to attack Sieging Pass and encircle the Mahist army with the northern tribes. They might as well stab Enchanting in the back a few times first. When the backyard was on fire, Enchanting would have no time to make trouble for the Mahist army. After sending off Queen Helan and the others, Mo Xiaoyao looked at Yi Li and didn't say anything for a long time. Yi Li smiled sweetly and said, "What's wrong?" Mo Xiaoyao took her hand and held it in his palm. He said in a deep voice, "I'm leaving." Yi Li nodded and said, "I know. I will finish the matter in the north as soon as possible and go back to meet you." Now the Mahist army had started a full-scale war with the northern tribes and the north. This was different from last year's war. Last year, it was to snatch the Chu capital. It was not a matter of life and death for both sides. But this time, it was a war of life and death. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the two people in charge of the Prince Ding mansion to stay in the north. Even if it was to calm the army, one person must appear on the battlefield. It was not easy for Mo Xiaoyao to accompany Yi Li to the north and stay for so long. Let people keep an eye on Tan Jiji. He can't be trusted too much. If he doesn't know his place, just kill him. Mo Xiaoyao whispered. Knowing that he was worried about her, Yi Li leaned in his arms and whispered with a smile, "You know, I always have a sense of propriety. I know what to do and what not to do. I won't put myself in danger." If she didn't care about life and death in the past, she wouldn't now. She had a husband who loved her, 3 underage children, and so many loved ones. No matter what the reason was, she would protect her own life. Mo Xiaoyao said in a depressed voice, "How can I not be worried? I just want to find a place to hide you. I won't let anyone see you and I won't let you encounter any danger. You're already so old yet you're still so childish. Aren't you embarrassed?" Yi Li helplessly rolled her eyes. She looked at him with a smile and said, "I can't see anyone forever." Mo Xiaoyao's face became even more gloomy. "I know, you can't let go of the Su family, your friends, and Mo Xiaobao." Speaking of Mo Xiaobao, Mo Xiaoyao gritted his teeth out of habit. Seeing his face full of resentment and jealousy, Yi Li smiled and gently kissed him on the lips. "All right, if you don't need to care about the Prince Ding mansion in the future and you still think like this, then I'll sacrifice myself. I'll sacrifice myself and we'll go wherever you want." Mo Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. "Ollie, are you serious?" Yi Li blinked. "Of course I'm serious. All right. Once I pass the throne to Mo Xiaobao, we'll go live in seclusion." The gloominess on his handsome face was swept away and Mo Xiaoyao's face was filled with high spirits. Seeing his excited face, Yi Li couldn't help but have black lines on her face. "You're not planning on immediately passing the throne to him, right?" She believed that Mo Xiaoyao would definitely do something so unreliable. Mo Xiaoyao hugged her and said with a bit of regret, "I really want to do that." Seeing Yi Li's displeased eyes, he quickly continued, "It's a pity that Mo Xiaobao's age is a bit too young. At least wait until he's able to get on a horse to fight, right? How about 14? I won't even be 14 before going to the battlefield." Mo Xiaobao was 8 years old this year. 14 would be 6 years later. What a wonderful thing. At that time, Su Qingchen would still be there. If Mo Xiaobao was smart, he could trick Su Qingchen into working for him for a few more years. Thinking like this, Mo Xiaoyao suddenly felt that the heavens were really good to him. It must be to make up for the rough and unlucky first half of his life that the heavens gave him such a promising second half. Seeing the happy face of the person in front of her, Yi Li speechlessly pushed him away and walked into the room. Mo Xiaoyao helplessly followed her. Before he left, he glanced at the wall not far away. His sleeves moved and a gust of wind blew. Something fell to the ground with a bang and there was a muffled groan. After sending off Mo Xiaoyao, Yi Li turned around and walked in. The moment she walked in, she saw Tan Jiji sitting in the courtyard looking at her with a smile. But the way he sat was a bit strange. From time to time, he would reach out and touch a certain part of his shoulder. He couldn't help but grimace. Seeing his strange appearance, Yili faintly raised her eyebrows and said, "Why does young Master Tan have time to come over?" Chapter 829. Tanjiji said with a smile, "Don't I have something to report to Prince Ding and Wang Fei? I happened to see the prince and Wang Fei saying goodbye. This one did not want to disturb them and could only wait here." Yili looked at the dirt on his dark blue robes and said faintly, "Thank you, Tan Gongzi, for waiting so long. It really was a long wait." Tanjiji gritted his teeth. Seeing Yili sit down in front of him, he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow as he said with a smile, "Prince Ding is really not worried about leaving Wang Fei alone in the north." Yili's fingertips flashed with silver light. With a whoosh, it flew past Tanjiji's face and nailed to the tree behind him. Ignoring his teasing, Yili gave a faint smile and said, "Tan Gongzi, do you want to try and see why Prince is not worried about leaving me alone?" Tanjiji quickly shook his head. He had not missed Mo Xiuyao's words, "If there's anyone who doesn't know their place, kill them." He also believed that Yili would definitely be able to kill him. He quickly changed the topic and said seriously, "I have already contacted the Prime Minister in the north, and I mentioned a little about my and Rin Qining's identities." Yili looked at him. "Why would he believe that you are real and Rin Qining is fake?" When Lin Yuan was born, the Lin family had experienced a great change. Several family members had taken the young master of the Lin family Lin Yuan and fled. Rin Qining had only been found by the retainers of the Lin family when she was almost 10 years old. Tanjiji shook his head and said, "He did not believe me and does not need to. The previous dynasty has been gone for more than 200 years. Wang Fei, do you really think that it is important whether the orphan of the previous dynasty is real or fake? Those people just. Some can't forget the glory of the previous dynasty and their family, and some have no way out. Even if they did not find Rin Qining, there would still be Zhang Qining and Li Qining. They just need to believe that I can give them more than Rin Qining can give them. I'm afraid that will be somewhat difficult." Yili rubbed her forehead as she pondered. Even if Rin Qining was now in trouble, no matter how one looked at it, Rin Qining was still more successful than Tanjiji and could bring more benefits to others. After all, Rin Qining had the northern border country, while Tanjiji had nothing. If they gave up on Rin Qining, it meant that those people would have to struggle for another few decades. Would they, who had already begun to enjoy life, be willing to do so? Tanjiji said with a faint smile, "It's indeed very difficult. However, it wasn't impossible." These old officials of the previous dynasty also had conflicts with Rin Qining. These people wanted to chase the people from the northern region away as soon as possible, or kill them all. That way, they would be able to enjoy the fruits of their victory without having to share it equally with the northerners. But Rin Qining was more likely to use the people of the northern region to fight for him. However, the people of the northern region were no fools. If he wanted the people of the northern region to continue working for him, he would not allow Queen Helan to give birth to an imperial heir and make him the crown prince. And it just so happened that those old antiques couldn't tolerate it. This time, Rin Qining brought Queen Helan and Imperial concubine Yun back to the palace for less than 2 days before Imperial concubine Yun miscarried. The Prime Minister's manor believed that it was done by the people of the northern region and wanted Rin Qining to severely punish Queen Helan. However, Rin Qining was in a hurry to send troops to attack Zijing Pass and suppressed the matter. What's the truth of the matter? Yili raised her eyebrows and asked. Tanjiji said, "It's possible that it really was done by the people of the northern region. After all, the people of the northern region would definitely not allow Sir Imperial concubine Yun to give birth to a prince of the Central Plains. However, it's also possible that imperial concubine Yun was tired from the journey and really had an accidental miscarriage. However, who would care about this kind of thing? The people of the Central Plains only wanted to use this matter to denounce the people of the northern region. Regardless of whether it was done by the people of the northern region or not, at least they were happy to see it. As for Enchanting, he could only keep the peace for the time being. So, the Prime Minister is dissatisfied with Enchanting? Yili asked. Tanjiji said with a smile, it's nothing much. In the eyes of those people, the country has already been decided. As for who becomes the emperor, it doesn't matter. As long as it can bring them more benefits, there's nothing wrong with replacing Enchanting with Tanjiji. Even if they want to climb up and become the emperor one day, I won't be surprised. I'm very sorry, you won't be able to become the emperor this time. Yili apologized sincerely. Tanjiji pouted and said, it's fine. I don't want to be the emperor of the northern region, and I don't want to be a puppet either. He wanted to restore the country, but he didn't want to be a puppet that couldn't make any decisions on its own. Moreover, this puppet had the name of the barbarians attached to it. Seeing that Enchanting was a little disappointed, Yili asked with some curiosity, have you done anything that you wanted to do in your life? Tanjiji looked at her and said, yes, I've been doing it all this time. The corner of Yili's mouth twitched slightly and said, are you talking about restoring the country? What's wrong with that? Tanjiji didn't think much of it. His biggest dream in this life was to restore the country. Hadn't he been doing it all this time? Although there hadn't been any results. Yili shook her head and looked at him with a complicated expression. She said, I can see that you really want to restore the country. Tanjiji had interacted with Yili a few times, so he had some understanding of her. He asked, Princess, you don't seem to agree. Yili smiled faintly and said, everyone has their own ambitions. I'm not a descendant of the imperial family, so I naturally don't understand that feeling. It's just that, if you want to drag the world into the flames of war for your family, is it really necessary? Tanjiji's face darkened and said, what do you mean by is it necessary? This world originally belonged to my Lin family. Yili said indifferently, before your Lin family, this world was surnamed Shui. If you can directly kill the emperor and change the dynasty, I wouldn't have any objections even if you change the emperor every day. However, every time there's a change of dynasty, the ones who suffer the most are the ordinary people. They don't owe your Lin family anything. On the contrary, it was your Lin family's ancestors who were incompetent and dragged them into the flames of war. After that, the descendants of the Lin family all worked hard to drag them into the flames of war again. Tanjiji was speechless. He didn't agree with Yili's words, but he faintly felt that what she said wasn't wrong. After a while, Tanjiji laughed coldly and said, Princess's words are pleasant to hear. Then what are Princess and Prince Ding doing right now? Could it be that Princess wants to tell me that Prince Ding doesn't have the heart to fight for the world? Does Princess think that I won't believe it? Mo Xiuyao's scheming was so deep that people couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. It seemed that he was being controlled everywhere and had no choice. However, in just a few short years, he had turned the Prince Ding mansion from its years of depression and silence after the defeat into its current state, spanning the Dechu state and Xiling state, and occupying the capitals of the two major countries at the same time. How could such a change not be frightening? Looking back now, one would find that many things were clearly planned by Mo Xiuyao in advance. Yili said lightly, so what if you believe it? So what if you don't believe it? Coincidentally, is the Prince Ding mansion going to stick its neck out and stab it? Young Master Tan. The Lin family's ancestors were just unwilling to admit their failure. As for you, it was just to fulfill your ambition. In fact, it has nothing to do with whether or not the country is restored. Tanjiji was speechless again. After a long silence, he couldn't help but sigh and say, perhaps Princess is right. However, I've already walked on this path for more than 30 years. Even if I wanted to stop, I couldn't. Chapter 8:30. Tanjiji's efficiency was extremely high. Within a few days, he had secretly made friends with many of the influential people in Chongqing City. Yili looked at the news sent by the spies of the Prince Ding mansion in Chongqing City every day and couldn't help but sigh. No wonder Tanjiji was able to fool Mo Jingli, Mo Jingqi, and the Saintess of Nanjiang, Xu Manlin, all these years. His ability and methods were indeed not small. It was a pity that time didn't wait for him. Xu Manlin and Mo Jingqi died one after another, and Mo Jingli suspected them of being abandoned. All of his plans and calculations could only fall short of success. Although he knew of Yi Li's ability, Mo Xiaoyao had always been extremely worried about Yi Li's safety. So when he left, not only did he leave behind Qin Feng, Wu Jing, and Lin Han, who usually followed Yi Li, he also transferred over He Su, who was originally guarding the Chu capital. Yi Li didn't make an error of judgment that year. Compared to Zhu Jing, Lin Han, and Wei Lin, He Su was more suitable to lead troops into battle. In just a short 10 years, He Su had used his own ability to obtain a place among the generals of the Dechu state. At that time, he took advantage of the opportunity when Mo Jingli moved the capital down south to expand without restraint. So when the Chu capital was besieged, He Su was able to lead 200,000 troops to rescue it. In these 10 years, He Su could be said to have completely relied on his own ability to obtain his current position. It was believed that in another 10 years, he would definitely become another Zhang Qilan and Lu Jingxian. With these four people, whether it was martial arts or strategy, they were extremely outstanding. Mo Xiaoyao was also more assured of Yi Li's safety. Wang Fei. In the study, He Su stood in front of the desk, respectfully waiting for Yi Li's orders. Yi Li looked at him for a long time before she smiled and said, "He Su, you are already a great general in charge of thousands of soldiers and horses. Now that you are following me, what do you have to say?" He Su bowed respectfully to Yi Li and said with a serious expression, "This subordinate is able to achieve what I have today because of Wang Fei. It's just that this subordinate was originally Wang Fei's bodyguard, but I didn't serve Wang Fei like second brother, third brother, and fourth brother. Now that I am able to follow Princess Consort and reunite with my three brothers, it is this subordinate's fortune." He Su's achievements over the years could be said to be astonishing. After all, he went from an ordinary person to a commander in 10 years. But these changes were not worth mentioning compared to the great changes in the Prince Ding mansion over the years. He Su naturally did not have any bad thoughts after being transferred by Mo Xiaoyao to Yi Li's side. Compared to other people, they had once been Princess Ding's shadow guard and understood Wang Fei's abilities and position in the prince's heart. To be able to follow Wang Fei was a fortune that others could not ask for. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "That's good. The reason the prince transferred you back to my side is because I really do need someone to lead soldiers into battle. It's not because I want to take away your military power. When I sent you to the army, it proves that I feel you are suitable for the army. In these years, you have not disappointed me. After this matter, you will go back to lead soldiers. I hope you understand." Yi Li did not feel that everyone in the world should be unconditionally loyal to her without complaint or regret. It was said that a fine bird chose a tree to nest in. Transferring a great general to be a guard was a waste of talent, and it was too presumptuous of her to want him to have no complaints. Even if He Su did not feel wronged, Yi Li felt that she should make things clear to him to avoid any misunderstandings that would make everyone unhappy. This subordinate understands. Many thanks, Princess Consort. He Su was truly grateful to Yi Li from the bottom of his heart. He had originally been a shadow guard of the Prince Ding mansion. If not for Yi Li, even if he was trusted by his master, he would not have become a general. And he found that Wang Fei's original view was not wrong. Compared to being a guard, he preferred to kill on the battlefield. Yi Li nodded and said, "Take my token to find Queen Helan. She will find a way to arrange for you to enter the army in the north. When the time comes, you will know what to do." He Su only thought for a moment and then understood Yi Li's thoughts. He frowned slightly and said, "Princess Consort wants to incite the Central Plains soldiers in the army in the north to rebel?" Yi Li smiled and nodded. "Yes. Also, we only have 1.5 months at most. Therefore, your mission is somewhat difficult. Is there a problem?" He Su thought for a while before saying, "The army in the north has only occupied Dechu State for 2 years, but they have recruited large amounts of soldiers to the point that the people have no way to make a living." This subordinate thought that the middle and lower level generals of the Central Plains soldiers would not have any loyalty to the north. If we add on the reputation of the Prince Ding mansion, it should not be hard to convince them. Hearing him say this, Yi Li nodded in satisfaction. She picked up a file from the side and said, "This is a list of the generals in the north who did not go with Ren Qining, and their backgrounds. Take it and do as you see fit. You can tell them that as long as they pledge allegiance to the Prince Ding mansion, this consort will not pursue the matter of them following Ren Qining to attack the Chu capital. Their military ranks and positions will remain unchanged. If they perform meritorious deeds, the Prince Ding mansion will not be reluctant to reward them." He Su was also delighted. If these Central Plains soldiers said that they were loyal to Ren Qining, it would be a joke. But their biggest worry was that they had followed Ren Qining to attack the Dechu state. They were afraid that the Mahist army would settle accounts with them after the battle. Now that they had Princess Ding's personal promise, they naturally had no worries. After all, compared to Ren Qining, anyone would think that choosing the Prince Ding mansion was more reliable. Putting away the file, He Su said respectfully, "This subordinate understands. This subordinate will leave now. Go. I will send Lin Han and Qi Lin to secretly assist you. If necessary, we can use extreme measures. After all, we are in a hurry." Yes. Chongqing City. On the surface, there seemed to be no difference from usual. But in many places, there were already turbulent undercurrents surging in secret. However, no one knew that all these changes came from the quiet and graceful woman in this seemingly ordinary little courtyard in the city. In the Prime Minister's manner, the current Prime Minister of the Northern Territories looked somewhat doubtfully at the few people before him. Finally, his gaze fell on the white-clothed girl beside Tan Jiji, his gaze flickering. "Young Master Tan, this lady is..." Without waiting for Tan Jiji to speak, that white-clothed girl said mildly, "Prime Minister Yun, this little girl's surname is Dongfang." Dongfang. Infinite boundless mountain. That's impossible. The Prime Minister stood up in shock, staring at that white-clothed girl. Beside him, Tan Jiji's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Looking at the Prime Minister, he said with a straight face, "Why is it impossible?" The Prime Minister said, "Young Master Tan is trying to fool this old man. Infinite Boundless Mountain has long since sided with King Li. How can this lady be a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Could it be that young Master Tan thinks that my northern territories are so remote that we don't know anything?" Tan Jiji shrugged, looking at the girl sitting opposite him. The white-clothed girl laughed coldly, saying mildly, "Who said that Infinite Boundless Mountain can only have one descendant? Moreover, Dongfang Yu's reputation in Glass City has long since been completely destroyed. How can she still be a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain?" This. While he had always been in Chongqing City, the Prime Minister still knew what he should know. Naturally, he also knew what Yi Li meant by completely destroyed reputation. His brows furrowed as he thought, could it be that Infinite Boundless Mountain is planning to hide behind the scenes? Chapter 831. Looking at the frowning, serious old man before him, Tanjiji shook his head inwardly. Luckily, he had no intention of cooperating with this old man. Otherwise, how could a person whose imagination would be so happy with just a casual sentence be reliable? The Prime Minister was silent for a while before looking at the two of them, asking, "Miss, why should I believe that you are a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain?" The white-clothed girl asked mildly, "Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendants usually don't need the so-called official seal as proof. How does Minister Yun want me to prove it? I heard that Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendants are proficient in the four arts, poetry, singing and dancing, astrology, medicine and divination. I wonder if Miss is able to treat little fool." When Tanjiji had sent that young master of the Prime Minister's manor back, he had already fallen unconscious. The Prime Minister could do anything, but even the famous doctors of the city had not been able to treat him. It was not that he had not suspected Tanjiji, but afterwards, he had sent people to investigate. His son had indeed been harmed by those northern barbarians, and the poison his son had been inflicted with was said to be a secret medicine of the north that had almost been lost. The white-clothed girl said mildly, "I already know of the poison that your son has been inflicted with. To be honest, I am indeed unable to treat it now. However, Infinite Boundless Mountain has a 1,000-year-old blood mushroom that can treat this poison. After young Master Tan told me, I have already sent people back to retrieve it." That Prime Minister was also not an easy person to fool, but he was a classic example of not letting go until he saw the rabbit. This old man has indeed heard that Infinite Boundless Mountain has a 1,000-year-old blood mushroom. Since that is the case, this old man will wait for Mrs. Medicine. His meaning was that he should believe her identity, and wait until he saw the 1,000-year-old blood mushroom. The white-clothed girl did not mind, nodding, "That is also good. It will take at most 1.5 months to go to Infinite Boundless Mountain and return. I also hope that Minister Yun can keep his word. Otherwise, the price of playing with my Infinite Boundless Mountain." With a cracking sound, the teacup in that slender, jade-like hand had already turned into dust. The white-clothed girl stood up and said to Tanjiji, "Young Master Tan, since Minister Yun does not wish to talk now, let's go. You and I will go back first. It won't be too late to talk after the 1,000-year-old blood mushroom arrives. Young Master has already waited for so many years, a few more days won't matter." Tanjiji smiled, "Miss is right. Please. It seems that the previous dynasty has indeed been dead for too long, such that the nobles of the previous dynasty have long forgotten their former glory. They only want to occupy a small place and live in peace. If that is the case, young Master Tan and this lady have come to the wrong place." Lady Dongfang. Being mocked so mercilessly by the white-clothed girl, Prime Minister Yun's face also turned a little ugly. However, he had to admit that her words were not false. Chongqing City was not even comparable to some of the larger cities in the Central Plains, let alone the Chu capital emperor of Xiling City and Glass City. Looking at Prime Minister Yun, the white-clothed girl said rather proudly, "As long as Prime Minister Yun fulfills your promise, Infinite Boundless Mountain will naturally assist the northern region in restoring its economy and livelihood. Also, Infinite Boundless Mountain can also secretly persuade Mo Jingli and Genom of Gojoseon to work together to deal with the Prince Ding Mansion. At that time, the Prince Ding Mansion will naturally not be a difficult matter. Conquering the Chu capital will naturally be a matter of time." Hearing her words, the Prime Minister could not help but feel pleased as he looked deeply at that white-clothed girl, before looking at Tanjiji. From what this old man knows, the successors of Infinite Boundless Mountain in the past have all been married off to someone of lower status. If that is the case, in the future. Tanjiji's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly said, "Prime Minister need not worry. If this matter really succeeds, the future queen will definitely come from the Yun family." "Oh. The Prime Minister clearly did not believe it. After all, they were all clear on Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation and habits. The white-clothed girl smiled sweetly. Prime Minister need not doubt it. Actually, Infinite Boundless Mountain originally did not intend to interfere in these matters this time. It is just that, the Prince Ding Mansion has humiliated Infinite Boundless Mountain too much in Glass City. If we are unable to retaliate, the world will even look down on Infinite Boundless Mountain. Once this matter succeeds, this lady will return to the mountain and no longer concern herself with worldly affairs. So that is how it is. The Prime Minister relaxed slightly, smiling. The white-clothed girl nodded, smiling. Since both of us are satisfied with our conditions, I will have to trouble Prime Minister Yun. Of course, Infinite Boundless Mountain and young Master Tan will also help in secret. I believe that the day when Prime Minister Yun officially becomes the king's father-in-law will also be just around the corner. These words struck the Prime Minister's heart as he chuckled. Many thanks for Lady's auspicious words. Seeing Lady act like this old man finally believes that Lady is truly a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Lady is so outstanding amongst women. In this world, only that princess consort of the Ding Kingdom would be able to match you. The white-clothed girl smiled mildly, before taking her leave of Tan Jiji. Exiting the Prime Minister's manor, Tan Jiji's expression instantly turned ugly. Princess, isn't this pretense of yours a little too big? The white-clothed girl's features were elegant, a smile on her face. Wasn't this the Yili in disguise? That Prime Minister had just been comparing her to the Prince Ding Mansion. How would he have thought that the Princess Ding he spoke of was right in front of him?